Greetings, dear viewers. You're watching Dark Harry. We have prepared something special for you today. What if the Addams family homeschooled Harry and he showed up to Hogwarts completely unhinged? Chaos. Your likes and subscriptions keep this channel alive. If you enjoy our content, please show your support. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The boy who was raised by darkness. The explosion rocked the east wing of the Addams mansion, sending a plume of purple smoke billowing from the second-floor window. Lurch's deep groan echoed through the hallways, but nobody panicked. In fact, the corners of Morticia's blood-red lips curled upward as she arranged nightshade in a vase of wilted roses. "It appears the children are making progress," she remarked, snipping a rose bloom off with her fingers. Gomez looked up from his newspaper, cigar clenched between his teeth. "Marvelous. Nothing says, 'Happy Birthday,' like successful demolitions." Upstairs, 10-year-old Harry Potter wiped soot from his round glasses and grinned at his adoptive siblings. His lightning bolt scar stood out vividly against his ash-smudged forehead. "Wicked," Wednesday said, her braided pigtails somehow still perfectly intact despite the blast. "That's the most powerful one yet." Pugsley, round-faced and grinning, held up a twisted piece of metal. "Look. It melted Uncle Fester's old bear trap." Harry adjusted his glasses. "I think we need more salamander blood next time. And maybe some of that weird powder Grandmama keeps in the skull-shaped jar." The door creaked open, and Grandmama herself shuffled in, her wild gray hair moving seemingly on its own. "Did someone mention my special powders? You children aren't mixing potions without me again, are you?" "Just a little birthday experiment, Grandmama," Harry explained. "We wanted to see if we could make something that explodes and turns people's hair into snakes." Grandmama cackled. "Oh, that's child's play. When you're 11, I'll teach you how to make a potion that can turn someone inside out, temporarily, of course." She shuffled closer, inspecting their work with her one good eye. "But not bad for amateurs." "Not bad at all." Harry beamed. That was high praise from Grandmama, who had been brewing potions since before the Salem witch trials, which she frequently complained were grossly exaggerated in their effectiveness. "Come along now," she said. "Morticia's prepared lunch. Eye of Newt sandwiches, your favorite, Harry." The three children raced downstairs, navigating the creaking steps and dodging the swinging axes that served as the mansion's unique security system. Harry, nimble from years of practice, didn't even flinch when the trapdoor opened beneath his feet. He simply leapt over it with practiced ease. In the dining room, the entire family had gathered. Morticia and Gomez sat at either end of the long, mahogany table. Uncle Fester was already electrocuting himself with the chandelier for the children's entertainment. Lurch stood solemnly in the corner, while Thing, just a disembodied hand, scuttled across the table arranging silverware. "Ah, there's our birthday boy!" Gomez exclaimed, jumping up to greet Harry. "One day away from 11. How does it feel to be on the cusp of such a momentous age?" Harry slid into his seat, a high-backed chair decorated with bat carvings. "I still can't believe I get a whole séance for my birthday." "Nothing but the best for you, my boy," Gomez clapped him on the shoulder. "We've invited your parents, of course, and a few other notable specters. The Headless Horseman RSVP'd just this morning. We've known for years you had the gift," Morticia added, serving a spoonful of something bubbling and green onto Harry's plate. "Not every child can see Cousin Ophelia's ghost dancing in the attic." Harry nodded. That had happened when he was 6, his first conscious encounter with the supernatural. The Addamses had been delighted, declaring him a true member of the family despite his adoption. "And remember, dear," Morticia continued, "tomorrow we also have to prepare for your other celebration." "My other celebration?" Morticia and Gomez exchanged meaningful glances. "Your Hogwarts letter should arrive tomorrow," Gomez explained. "The school for witches and wizards that your birth parents attended." Harry's eyes widened. "You really think it'll come?" "Of course it will," Uncle Fester chimed in, taking a break from electrocuting himself. With all the strange things you do. Remember when you turned Mrs. Wilson's cat purple after she complained about our vultures? Or when you made all the dead frogs in science class start dancing, Wednesday added. The teacher fainted. Harry grinned at the memory. I didn't even know I was doing it. Raw talent, Gomez nodded approvingly. Just like your father. James was quite the troublemaker, from what I've heard. And Lily was brilliant with charms and potions, Morticia added, her voice softening slightly. Much like you, Harry. Harry felt a familiar mix of emotions, pride in his birth parents, gratitude for his adoptive family, and curiosity about the world they came from. The Addamses had never hidden the truth from him about James and Lily Potter, or how they died protecting him from the dark wizard Voldemort. In fact, the Addamses spoke of their sacrifice with deep respect. Death, after all, was something the family held in the highest regard. Will I still be able to come home for holidays? Harry asked suddenly, realizing what going to Hogwarts would mean. We wouldn't have it any other way, Gomez declared. Christmas wouldn't be the same without you for the annual Yule sacrifice. Of carrots, Morticia clarified, seeing Harry's momentary confusion. For the Yule goat. Wednesday reached over and squeezed Harry's hand, a rare show of affection. And you'll write to us about all the ghosties and creatures at Hogwarts. Every week, Harry promised. Now, Gomez said, checking his pocket watch, eat up. We have fencing lessons in 20 minutes, and then you need to help Uncle Fester with his new electrical experiment. Harry dug into his lunch with gusto. Just another normal day in the Addams household. The next morning, Harry woke to the familiar sound of chains rattling in the east corridor. He rolled over in his four-poster bed, its black velvet curtains decorated with silver constellations that actually moved and shifted. His bedroom was a curious mix of magical and macabre. Shelves lined with specimen jars containing strange creatures preserved in various colored liquids. A collection of daggers and swords that Gomez had started for him. Potion ingredients labeled in Morticia's elegant handwriting. A child-sized coffin in the corner that served as his thinking box when he wanted quiet time. And books, dozens of them, ranging from Practical Curses for the Young Practitioner to The Beginner's Guide to Venomous Reptiles. Harry stretched and reached for his glasses on the nightstand, where Thing had already placed them within easy reach. Thanks, Thing, Harry said. The disembodied hand gave him a thumbs up before scuttling away. Harry dressed quickly in his favorite outfit, black trousers, a white shirt with a slightly frilly collar, Morticia insisted it looked dashing, and a dark purple waistcoat that Grandmama had enchanted to shimmer faintly in the dark. When he reached the dining room, he found the entire family already gathered, all looking expectantly at an envelope sitting on his plate. It's here. Pugsley announced unnecessarily. Harry's heart skipped. The envelope was thick and made of yellowish parchment. The address was written in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the East Tower, bedroom 13, Cemetery Lane, the Addams estate. Well, go on, Gomez encouraged. Open it. With slightly trembling fingers, Harry broke the purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms and pulled out the letter. He read aloud, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confede, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Harry looked up, his face split in an enormous grin. I'm going to Hogwarts. Of course you are, Wednesday said matter-of-factly. You made the garden gnomes dance the tango last week. This calls for a celebration. Gomez declared. Lurch, fetch the special occasion crossbows. Not now, dear, Morticia placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. We have the séance tonight, remember. And tomorrow we must take Harry to get his supplies. Right you are, my dear. Gomez instantly shifted gears. Diagon Alley it is. I haven't been there in years. Not since that unfortunate incident with the goblin and the cursed amulet. Which was completely resolved, Morticia smoothly interjected. Harry looked through the second page of his letter, listing books and equipment. Cauldron, wand, robes, can I bring my pet spider? The supply list specifies cat, toad, or owl, Morticia noted, reading over his shoulder. Harry's face fell. However, she continued with a sly smile, I know several ways to bend such rules. Perhaps we should visit that unusual pet shop in Knockturn Alley while we're in London. Harry's spirits immediately lifted. Can we go right now? First things first, Grandmama interrupted. Today is your birthday séance. We've been planning it for months. And you still need to respond to your letter, Morticia reminded him. Harry nodded and looked around at his family. How do I send an owl? We don't have one. Oh, that's easily remedied, Uncle Fester grinned. He pulled a small whistle from his pocket and blew it, producing a sound too high for human ears. Within moments, a huge, battle-scarred barn owl swooped through the open window, landing on the back of Harry's chair with a menacing hoot. Bertha always comes when called, Uncle Fester explained proudly. She's not technically mine. She just likes to eat the bats that nest in my chimney. Harry carefully wrote his acceptance letter, making sure his handwriting was as neat as Morticia had taught him. He attached it to Bertha's leg, and the owl took off with a screech. Now, Gomez said, rubbing his hands together, let's prepare for the grandest séance this house has seen in decades. Darkness had fallen by the time the séance began. The Addams family gathered in the circular room at the top of the house's tallest turret. Black candles burned in skull-shaped holders, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The windows were draped with heavy black velvet, and the air smelled of incense and grave dirt. Harry sat at the head of the round table, wearing ceremonial robes that Morticia had sewn especially for the occasion, black with silver embroidery depicting phases of the moon and ancient symbols of death and rebirth. Remember, Grandmama instructed as they all joined hands around the table, focus your energy on inviting the spirits we wish to contact. Particularly your parents, Harry. Harry nodded solemnly. The Addamses had attempted to contact James and Lily Potter before, with varying degrees of success. Once, Harry had heard his mother's laugh echoing through the room. Another time, the candles had spelled out, proud, in smoke signals. Morticia began the chant, her voice low and melodious. The others joined in, even Wednesday and Pugsley, who had been practicing for weeks to get the pronunciation right. Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the few memories he had of his parents, more feelings than images. Warmth. Safety. Love. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. The candle flames turned blue. They're coming, Grandmama whispered. Harry felt it too, a presence, or rather, presences. Multiple spirits entering the room, drawn by the family's call. The first to materialize was the headless horseman, his spectral form galloping around the perimeter of the room. He bowed to Harry, a rather strange sight without a head, before taking position in the corner. Next came a procession of Addams' ancestors, Great-Aunt Lucretia, who had died in a suspicious avalanche of poisonous frogs, Cousin Crimp, who still carried the cursed scissors that had been his demise, and others Harry recognized from the family portraits in the gallery. And then, two new figures began to take shape in the center of the circle. A tall man with untidy hair and glasses. A woman with kind eyes and flowing red hair. Harry's breath caught in his throat. Mom. Dad. The figures became clearer. James and Lily Potter smiled at their son, their forms transparent but unmistakable. Harry, Lily's voice came as if from a great distance. Our boy. Look at you, James added, his voice filled with pride. Already 11. Harry couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed. The Addamses remained silent, respecting this moment between Harry and his birth parents. "I got my Hogwarts letter," Harry finally managed to say. "I'm going to school where you went." The spirits of his parents beamed. "You'll do wonderfully," Lily said. "You have so much ahead of you. And quite the unique upbringing," James added with a spectral chuckle, nodding to the Addamses. "Certainly not what we expected, but perfect," Lily finished. "They've loved you. That's all we ever wanted." Morticia spoke then, her voice gentle. "We've done our best to honor your memory while raising him as our own. We've taught him everything we know," Gomez added. "Fencing, explosives, how to detect poison by smell, the essentials." James's ghost actually laughed at that. "I can see he's had quite an education." "Hogwarts won't know what hit it," Lily agreed, but then her expression grew more serious. "Harry, there are things you should know," but at that moment, the connection began to waver. The spirit started to fade. "Our time grows short," the headless horseman announced, somehow, despite his lack of a head. "We love you, Harry," James said as he faded. "We're always watching over you. Be brave," Lily added. "And be yourself, your whole self." "I will," Harry promised, reaching out instinctively though his hand passed through their forms. And then they were gone, along with the other spirits. The candles returned to their normal color, and warmth gradually returned to the room. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Wednesday quietly reached over and took Harry's hand. Pugsley put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The rest of the family looked on with rare solemnity. That, Grandmama finally announced, was the most successful séance we've had in 83 years. Harry wiped a tear from his eye but was smiling. "Best birthday ever." Gomez cleared his throat. "Your parents would be proud, my boy. And tomorrow, we continue their legacy by getting you ready for Hogwarts." Diagon Alley was crowded with families doing their back-to-school shopping, but the crowd parted like the Red Sea as the Addams family made their entrance through the brick archway behind the leaky cauldron. Morticia glided ahead, her floor-length black dress seemingly floating above the cobblestones. Gomez strutted beside her in his pinstriped suit and spats, twirling his walking stick with dangerous enthusiasm. Grandmama hobbled behind them, cackling at something only she found funny. Uncle Fester brought up the rear, tossing occasional electrical sparks from his fingertips when he thought no one was looking. And in the center of this most unusual procession was Harry, taking in the magical sights with wide eyes behind his round glasses. "This is brilliant," he exclaimed, spinning around to see everything at once. "Look at that shop with the floating broomsticks. And those owls. And what's that shop with the explosions coming from it?" "That would be the apothecary," Morticia explained, "where we'll get your potion ingredients. Though I suspect their nightshade won't be nearly as fresh as what we grow at home." As they moved through the alley, whispers followed them. "Is that? It can't be. Harry Potter. Who are those people with him?" Harry, used to stares but usually for different reasons, instinctively tried to flatten his hair over his scar. Now, Gomez said, noticing the gesture. "An Addams never hides what makes them special. That scar is your badge of honor, wear it proudly." Harry nodded and deliberately mussed his hair again, making the lightning bolt visible. Their first stop was Gringotts, the wizard bank. The Addams family and goblins regarded each other with mutual suspicion and respect. "Ah, the Potter vault," the goblin teller said when Morticia presented the key. "And you are?" "His guardians," Morticia replied smoothly. "I am Morticia Addams, and this is my husband, Gomez." The goblin's eyes widened slightly. "Addams? The Addams family?" He lowered his voice. "We still have that cursed amulet in our restricted artifacts section." Gomez twirled his mustache. "Wonderful. I've always wondered where that ended up. Caused quite the ruckus in 1975, didn't it?" The goblin seemed to suppress a shudder. "Indeed. Follow me to the vault, please." The roller coaster ride down to the vaults delighted Harry and the Addamses. Uncle Fester kept trying to stand up for a better view until the goblin threatened to throw him out. When they reached Harry's vault, he was shocked by the piles of gold, silver, and bronze coins inside. "Your parents left you well provided for," Morticia explained. "This is your inheritance." Harry filled his pouch with coins, still amazed that he had his own fortune. Back in the alley, they began the shopping in earnest. At Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, Harry stood patiently as he was measured for his school robes. "Could we add silver thread to the edges?" Morticia inquired. "Just a touch of distinction. And perhaps some interior pockets for storing various specimens," Gomez suggested. Madame Malkin looked uncertain but agreed when Gomez offered to pay extra. While being fitted, Harry noticed another boy being measured nearby, a pale boy with a pointed face and white blonde hair. "Hogwarts too?" the boy asked. "Yeah," Harry replied. "My father's next door buying my books and mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy in a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one anyway." Harry raised an eyebrow at this declaration. "You're going to bully your father? How exactly?" The boy looked taken aback by the direct question. "Well, I meant persuade, obviously." "That makes more sense," Harry nodded. "Though there are more effective ways to persuade someone than whining. At least that's what my sister Wednesday says. She once convinced our uncle to let her perform surgery on his pet vulture just by staring at him silently for 3 days. The boy blinked, clearly unsure how to respond to this information. "Your sister sounds unusual." "Oh, she is," Harry agreed cheerfully. "Our whole family is. I'm Harry Potter, by the way." The blonde boy's pale eyes widened dramatically. "Potter? The Harry Potter?" His gaze shot to Harry's forehead, where the scar was clearly visible. "The one and only," Harry confirmed. Before the boy could respond further, Gomez appeared, flourishing a handful of black fabric. "Harry, my boy. Look what I found. Robes made from genuine funeral shroud material. Morticia thinks they'd make excellent dress robes for special occasions." The blonde boy's jaw dropped. "Is that your father?" "Adoptive father," Harry explained. "Gomez Addams. And that's my mother Morticia over there, selecting gloves made from something called dragon hide. Addams?" The boy looked thoughtful. "My father has mentioned that name. Said they were an old family with unusual interests." "That's putting it mildly," Harry grinned. "What's your name, anyway?" "Malfoy," the boy said, drawing himself up importantly. "Draco Malfoy." Harry held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Draco. Maybe we'll see each other at Hogwarts." Draco hesitantly shook Harry's hand, looking equal parts fascinated and disturbed. "Yes, perhaps we will." After leaving Madame Malkin's, the family continued their shopping. At Flourish and Blott's, they purchased Harry's required textbooks, plus a few extras that caught his eye, Confronting the Faceless, Curses and Counter-Curses, and Magical Mediterranean Water Plants and Their Properties. Excellent choices, Morticia approved. Always good to be well-rounded in your magical education. Their next stop was the apothecary, where Grandmama took charge, inspecting each ingredient with critical expertise. "This wolfsbane is barely potent enough to give a werewolf a mild headache," she complained. "And these bat spleens. Practically dried out." Despite her criticisms, they purchased everything on Harry's list, plus a few extra ingredients that Grandmama insisted were essential for any serious potion maker. Finally, it was time for the most important purchase, Harry's wand. Ollivander's was dark and dusty when they entered, the air thick with magical energy. Mr. Ollivander himself emerged from the shadows, his wide, pale eyes shining. "Ah, yes," he said softly. Harry Potter. I wondered when I'd be seeing you. His gaze then shifted to the Addams family, and his eyebrows rose dramatically. And the Addams clan. How unexpected. Ollivander. Gomez greeted him like an old friend. Still making the best wands in Britain, I see. You remember my wand, I presume? Morticia added. Ebony, 13 inches, with a core of vampire bat heartstring. A special commission. How could I forget? Ollivander murmured. One of the few non-standard cores I've ever worked with. Most unusual. He turned back to Harry. And now it's your turn, Mr. Potter. Let's find your match. What followed was a long process of Harry trying wand after wand, with increasingly dramatic results. One wand set fire to a potted plant. Another shattered a vase. A third caused all the shelves to shake violently. Tricky customer, Ollivander muttered, but he seemed pleased rather than frustrated. Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere. He disappeared into the back of the shop and returned with a dusty box. I wonder, try this one. Holly and Phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. The moment Harry grasped it, he felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand and brought it swishing down, producing a stream of red and gold sparks. Curious, Ollivander said, watching Harry carefully. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. A hush fell over the shop. Even the Addamses looked solemn. Voldemort had the brother wand? Harry asked directly, using the name without hesitation as the Addamses had always taught him. Fear of a name only increased fear of the thing itself, Grandmama always said. Ollivander flinched at the name but nodded. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. Uncle Fester broke the tension by clapping Harry on the shoulder. A powerful wand for a powerful wizard. That's our boy. They paid for the wand and left the shop, Harry still contemplating this new connection to the wizard who had killed his parents. Don't look so troubled, Harry, Morticia said gently as they walked. A tool is defined by its user, not its origins. Your mother's right, Gomez agreed. It's not the wand that matters, but the wizard who wields it. And you, my boy, have been raised to understand both light and darkness, and the important difference between darkness and evil. Harry nodded, feeling better. Can we go to the pet shop now? The letter says I can bring an owl, cat, or toad. Let's check Magical Menagerie first, Morticia suggested. And if you don't find anything suitable there, we can visit that interesting little shop down Nocturne Alley I mentioned. The Magical Menagerie was crowded with cages containing all manner of magical creatures. Harry moved slowly through the shop, examining each animal carefully. The cats hissed when he approached, perhaps sensing the lingering smell of the Addams family's pet lion, Kitty. The toad seemed dull and uninteresting compared to the poisonous varieties Grandmama kept in the swamp behind their house. The owls were more promising. Harry was particularly drawn to a beautiful snowy owl that watched him with intelligent amber eyes. She's been here for months, the shopkeeper said, noticing his interest. Bit temperamental, that one. Keeps biting customers. She's perfect, Harry declared immediately. The snowy owl preened, seeming to understand the compliment. With the owl's cage tucked under one arm and his wand safely in his pocket, Harry felt ready for Hogwarts at last. The Addams family made their way back through Diagon Alley, attracting stares but caring not at all. Just one more stop, Gomez announced. Ice cream. Every successful shopping expedition deserves a celebratory treat. They crowded into Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, where Harry ordered a chocolate and raspberry cone with chopped nuts. Morticia selected a strange black ice cream that tasted like licorice and night-blooming flowers. Gomez had a scoop of every flavor, stacked precariously high. Uncle Fester asked if they had anything that would make his tongue tingle like electricity, settling for a lemon sorbet with extra shock tarts. As they sat outside enjoying their treats, Harry noticed people passing by, pointing and whispering. Many were looking not just at him but at his whole family. "We're causing quite a stir," he observed. "Naturally," Morticia replied serenely. "The Addams family always does." "Do you think I'll fit in at Hogwarts?" Harry asked suddenly, voicing a concern he'd been harboring for days. The Addams family exchanged glances. "My dear boy," Gomez said finally, "fitting in is highly overrated. The Addams family has never fit in anywhere, and look how splendidly we've turned out." Besides, Wednesday added, the entire family had come to Diagon Alley, unwilling to miss Harry's first foray into the wizarding world. "Normal people are boring. What Wednesday means," Morticia translated, "is that you should always be true to yourself, Harry. Those who are meant to be your friends will accept you as you are." Harry nodded, feeling reassured. With his new wand in his pocket, his owl watching him through the cage bars, and his family surrounding him, he felt ready to face whatever Hogwarts might bring. September 1st arrived in a flurry of activity. The entire Addams clan assembled to see Harry off at King's Cross Station, creating quite the spectacle as they marched through the concourse in full Gothic regalia. Lurch pushed Harry's trolley, which held his trunk and owl cage. Gomez led the way, consulting a pocket watch and declaring loudly, "Platform 9 3/4. Most intriguing." When they reached the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, Morticia smoothly explained, "We need to walk straight through the wall, Harry. It's an illusion designed to keep non-magical people out." Harry nodded, unsurprised. The Addams mansion had several walls you could walk through, and a few you definitely shouldn't. "I'll go first," Gomez volunteered. Capital adventure. He strode confidently toward the barrier and vanished. One by one, the Addams family followed, ignoring the startled looks from passing commuters. Finally, only Harry, Lurch, and the trolley remained. "Ready, Lurch?" Harry asked. "NNNNGH," Lurch groaned affirmatively. Together, they pushed through the barrier and emerged onto platform 9 3/4, where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited amid clouds of steam. The platform was crowded with students and parents saying their goodbyes. And every eye seemed to turn toward the Addams family. Whispers broke out instantly, "That's Harry Potter. Who are those people with him? Is that man's skin actually green? Did that hand just move on its own?" Harry ignored the stares, focused instead on the magnificent train that would take him to Hogwarts. "This is it," he said, excitement building in his chest. "Your first great adventure on your own," Morticia said, a hint of wistfulness in her voice. She adjusted his collar with elegant fingers. "Remember everything we've taught you. And write to us about all the ghosts and creatures you encounter," Wednesday insisted. "And if anyone gives you trouble," Pugsley added, slipping something into Harry's pocket, "this small explosive should help." "Pugsley," Morticia chided gently, "we agreed Harry would wait until at least October before causing any explosions at school." "Right, sorry," Pugsley muttered, but winked at Harry when Morticia looked away. Uncle Fester pressed a small book into Harry's hands. "My personal grimoire of electrical spells. Not strictly wizard magic, but useful in a pinch." Grandmama thrust a bag of cookies into his arms next. "Blood-flavored," she whispered. "For homesickness." "And this," Gomez said, presenting Harry with a small silver dagger, "has been in the Addams family for generations. Perfect for potion ingredients, self-defense, or cutting particularly tough meat at dinner." Harry tucked the knife carefully into his trunk, touched by the family heirloom. The train whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. "Time to board," Morticia said. "Do you have everything?" Harry nodded, suddenly feeling a lump in his throat. He'd never been away from the Addams family before. "I'll miss you all," he admitted. "And we'll miss you terribly," Morticia assured him, bending to kiss his forehead. "But Christmas will come before you know it. And we'll exchange letters every week," Gomez added. Lurch has become quite proficient at attaching messages to bats. Harry hugged each family member in turn, even Thing, who perched on his shoulder for a moment in what felt like a tiny embrace. With a final wave, Harry boarded the train, finding an empty compartment where he could lean out the window to continue waving to his family as the train began to move. The Addams family stood out starkly on the platform, Morticia tall and elegant in black, Gomez dapper and wild-eyed beside her, Wednesday and Pugsley solemn and strange, Uncle Fester grinning maniacally, Grandmama cackling and waving a handkerchief, Lurch towering above them all, and Thing perched on Gomez's shoulder, waving its fingers. They were the oddest family on the platform by far, and Harry felt a fierce surge of love for them. They had taken him in, raised him as their own, and prepared him for this moment in ways he was only beginning to understand. As the train rounded a bend and the platform disappeared from view, Harry sat back in his seat, his thoughts turning toward Hogwarts and the adventures that awaited him there. He wasn't alone for long. The compartment door slid open to reveal a tall, gangly, red-haired boy. "Anyone sitting there?" the boy asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." "Go ahead," Harry invited. The boy sat down, casting curious glances at Harry before quickly looking out the window, pretending he hadn't been staring. "I'm Ron, by the way," he finally said. "Ron Weasley." "Harry Potter," Harry replied. Ron's eyes widened. "Are you really? I mean, do you really have the—" He gestured vaguely toward his own forehead. Harry grinned and lifted his fringe to show the lightning bolt scar. "Wicked," Ron breathed. "And is it true? Were you really raised by, well—" He seemed unable to finish the question. "The Addams family?" Harry supplied. "Yeah, they adopted me when I was a baby. They're brilliant." Ron looked both fascinated and slightly terrified. "I've heard stories about them. Dad works at the ministry, and he says they've got a file they're thicker than a troll's skull. Something about cursed artifacts and illegal potions and a pet lion that ate somebody's prize peacocks." Harry laughed. "That would be Kitty. And he only ate one peacock. Honestly, Mr. Malfoy made such a fuss about it." "Malfoy?" Ron's expression darkened. "You know the Malfoys?" "I met Draco while getting my robes," Harry explained. "Bit full of himself, isn't he?" Ron relaxed slightly. "His whole family's bad news. Dark wizards, the lot of them." Harry raised an eyebrow. "Dark wizards? What exactly does that mean to you?" Ron looked confused by the question. "You know, evil. Followers of you-know-who." "Oh, you mean Voldemort?" Harry asked casually. Ron flinched violently. "Blimey. Don't say his name." "Why not? It's just a name. My family always taught me that fearing a name only increases fear of the thing itself." "Easy for them to say," Ron muttered. "The Addams family probably isn't afraid of anything." Harry considered this. "Well, Pugsley is afraid of normal, well-adjusted people. Says they're creepy. And Wednesday has this recurring nightmare about being forced to wear pink and smile in photographs." Ron stared at Harry for a long moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. "You're having me on." Harry grinned. "Only partly." The ice broken, Ron began telling Harry about his large family, 5 older brothers and a younger sister. Harry shared stories about growing up with the Addamses, carefully choosing the less disturbing anecdotes. Their conversation was interrupted when the compartment door slid open again. A round-faced boy looked in, tearful. "Sorry," he said, "but have you seen a toad at all?" When they shook their heads, he wailed, "I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me." "He'll turn up," Harry reassured him. "What's your name?" "Neville Longbottom," the boy sniffled. I'm Harry Potter, and this is Ron Weasley. Want to sit with us while you wait for your toad to reappear? Neville's eyes widened at Harry's name, but he nodded gratefully and took a seat. So what's the toad's name? Harry asked conversationally. Trevor, Neville replied miserably. My great-uncle Algy gave him to me when I finally showed signs of magic. Maybe he's exploring, Harry suggested. Grandmama's toads are always wandering off to find interesting bugs to eat. Your grandmother keeps toads? Neville asked, momentarily distracted from his worry. Not just any toads, Harry explained. Poisonous ones. She milks them for their venom to use in potions. Neville looked horrified. That's, useful, Harry supplied helpfully. Her wart removal cream works in under 10 seconds. Though it does turn the skin purple for a few hours afterward. The compartment door opened yet again, this time revealing a girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth. She was already wearing her Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one, she said in a bossy sort of voice. He's right here, Ron pointed out, gesturing to Neville. Oh, the girl said, looking slightly embarrassed. Well, I've been helping him look. She sat down without being invited. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. And you are? Ron Weasley. Neville Longbottom. Harry Potter. Hermione's eyes lit up. Are you really? I know all about you, of course, you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. And they say you were raised by a strange family after your parents died. The Addams family, Harry confirmed. And I doubt those books got much right about me. They certainly never interviewed me or my family. Hermione looked taken aback by this direct challenge to her book knowledge. Well, I suppose they might have, extrapolated certain details. Made stuff up, you mean, Ron translated with a snort. Hermione sniffed disapprovingly but changed the subject. Do any of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor, it sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. My whole family's been in Gryffindor, Ron said. I don't know what they'd say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin. What's wrong with Slytherin? Harry asked curiously. The other three stared at him. They're all dark wizards, Ron explained as if it were obvious. There wasn't a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. That can't possibly be true, Harry reasoned. Statistically speaking, evil people must come from all houses. Well, you know who was in Slytherin, Neville said quietly. So one data point makes an entire house evil. Harry raised an eyebrow. That doesn't make sense. Hermione looked thoughtful. You make a valid argument. Prejudice against an entire house based on the actions of certain members is rather illogical. Ron looked between them, incredulous. But Slytherin's full of pure-blood maniacs. No offense, mate, but with your history with you-know-who, I'd think you'd want to stay far away from anything associated with him. Harry shrugged. The Sorting Hat will put me where I belong. My family always says it's better to be authentic than to try to fit someone else's expectations. Your family sounds interesting, Hermione said diplomatically. They're brilliant, Harry said firmly. Different, yes, but they've taught me so much. Did you know my Uncle Fester can generate electricity from his body? And my mother can speak to carnivorous plants. And Grandmama knows potions that aren't in any book. The three other students exchanged glances that Harry had seen many times before, a mixture of fascination, disbelief, and mild alarm. Before anyone could respond, the compartment door slid open yet again. This time it was Draco Malfoy, flanked by two large, mean-looking boys. Is it true? Draco asked. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter is in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yes, Harry confirmed. Nice to see you again, Draco. Draco nodded toward his companions. This is Crabbe and Goyle. He turned back to Harry, ignoring the others in the compartment. You'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it. I think I can figure out the wrong sort for myself, thanks, Harry said coolly. And judging people based solely on their families seems like a fast track to making poor decisions. Draco's pale face flushed pink. You'd better watch yourself, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Longbottom, and it'll rub off on you. Harry stood up suddenly, his green eyes flashing. The temperature in the compartment seemed to drop several degrees. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried a note that made everyone present feel a chill down their spine. My family, the Addamses, taught me to respect death, Draco. My birth parents died protecting me, and I honor their sacrifice. But they also taught me that there are fates far worse than death. A small, cold smile curved his lips. Would you like me to demonstrate? The compartment fell completely silent. Crabbe and Goyle looked uncertainly at Draco, who had gone even paler than usual. You think you're so special because of that scar, Draco finally managed, though his voice lacked conviction. When we get to Hogwarts, you'll learn that threats only work when backed by real power. Harry finished for him. I agree completely. For a tense moment, it seemed like the confrontation might escalate. Then, to everyone's surprise, Harry's severe expression melted into a friendly smile. I meant what I said about judging people for yourself, Draco. That includes you. Maybe once we're at Hogwarts, we can start over. Confusion flickered across Draco's pointed face. This clearly wasn't how he expected the encounter to go. Without another word, he turned and left, Crabbe and Goyle lumbering after him. As the door closed, Ron let out a low whistle. Bloody hell, Harry. That was brilliant. Did you see his face when you mentioned fate's worse than death? Neville looked at Harry with newfound respect. You weren't actually going to do anything to him, were you? Harry grinned. Nah. Well, probably not. Gomez always says the threat of the unknown is more powerful than any actual spell. Let their imagination do the work for you, my boy. Hermione looked both impressed and slightly scandalized. Well, that was effective, I suppose. Though you really shouldn't be threatening other students before we even arrive at school. It wasn't a threat, Harry clarified. It was a philosophical observation. Ron snorted with laughter. Is that what the Addams family calls it? The tension broken, they spent the rest of the journey sharing sweets from the trolley. Harry bought plenty for everyone, and swapping stories. Harry found himself genuinely enjoying his new acquaintances, Ron's straightforward humor, Neville's quiet sincerity, and even Hermione's bossy knowledge-sharing. As darkness fell outside the windows, a voice echoed through the train, we will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train, it will be taken to the school separately. Harry's stomach fluttered with nerves and excitement. Hogwarts at last. He changed into his school robes, with the silver threading Morticia had insisted upon, and joined the crowd thronging the corridor as the train slowed and finally stopped. The platform was dark and cold when they stepped off the train, their breath misting in the night air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and a booming voice called, Furs Years. Furs Years over here. A gigantic man with a wild tangle of hair and beard beamed down at them. Come on, follow me, any more Furs Years? Mind your step, now. That's Hagrid, Ron whispered to Harry. Gamekeeper. Harry followed Hagrid with the other first years, down a steep, narrow path that opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. "No more and 4 to a boat," Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville climbed into one boat together. At Hagrid's command, the fleet of boats moved off all at once, gliding across the smooth, glass-like lake. "It's beautiful," Harry murmured, staring up at the castle. "It looks a bit like home, actually. But bigger." Ron looked sideways at him. "Your home looks like a castle." "More of a Victorian mansion with castle-like elements," Harry explained. "Lots of turrets and gargoyles." "Of course it does," Ron said, shaking his head but grinning. Their boat ride ended at an underground harbor, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. Hagrid led them up a passageway in the rock, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge, oak front door. "Everyone here." Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. The door swung open at once, revealing a tall, black-haired witch in emerald-green robes. She had a very stern face that reminded Harry a bit of Wednesday when she was planning something particularly diabolical. "The Fur's years, Professor McGonagall," said Hagrid. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She pulled the door wide, and the entrance hall took Harry's breath away. It was so large you could have fit the entire Addams mansion in it, with stone walls lit by flaming torches, a magnificent marble staircase, and a ceiling too high to make out. Professor McGonagall led them across the flagged stone floor to a small, empty chamber off the hall. There, she welcomed them to Hogwarts and explained about the 4 houses, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, and the House Cup competition. "The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's cloak, which was fastened under his left ear, and on Ron's smudged nose. Harry absently tried to flatten his hair, then remembered Gomez's advice about wearing his scar proudly and promptly mussed it back up. "I shall return when we are ready for you," said Professor McGonagall. "Please wait quietly." As soon as she left, the chamber filled with nervous whispers. "How exactly do they sort us into houses?" Harry asked Ron. "Some sort of test, I think. Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking." Harry wasn't particularly concerned. Growing up with the Addams family had given him a very different threshold for what constituted pain or danger. Whatever the test was, he doubted it could be worse than the time Uncle Fester had decided to test his pain tolerance by having him walk across hot coals while balancing poison-tipped daggers. Suddenly, several people screamed. About 20 ghosts had just streamed through the back wall, pearly white and slightly transparent, deep in conversation. While the other first years backed away in alarm, Harry stepped forward with interest. The Addams mansion was home to several ghosts, and he'd always found them fascinating. "Hello there," he called to them. "Are you resident ghosts of Hogwarts?" The ghosts turned in surprise. "New students," said a ghost wearing a ruff and tights. "About to be sorted, I suppose?" Harry nodded. "I'm Harry Potter. Do any of you know the Addams family ghosts? Great-Aunt Lucretia or Cousin Crimp, perhaps?" The ghosts exchanged glances. "The Addams family," the round ghost of what appeared to be a friar said uncertainly. "I've heard tales, quite the unusual lineage." "Indeed," Harry beamed. "They raised me." This revelation caused a stir among the ghosts, but before they could respond, Professor McGonagall returned. "Move along now," she said sharply to the ghosts. "The sorting ceremony's about to start." One by one, the ghosts floated away through the opposite wall, several casting curious backward glances at Harry. "Now, form a line and follow me," Professor McGonagall instructed the first years. Harry got into line behind a boy with sandy hair, with Ron behind him, and they walked out of the chamber, back across the hall, and through a pair of double doors into the Great Hall. Harry had never imagined such a strange and splendid place. Thousands of candles floated in midair over 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers sat. Professor McGonagall led the first years up here, so that they came to a halt in a line facing the other students, with the teachers behind them. Harry looked upward to see a velvety black ceiling dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history." It reminded Harry of his bedroom ceiling at home, though the Addams version tended to show more stormy skies and occasionally rained indoors. Professor McGonagall silently placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of the stool she put a pointed wizard's hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. The kind of hat Grandmama would have appreciated. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and the hat began to sing, the hat's song about the 4 houses. The whole hall burst into applause as the hat finished its song. It bowed to each of the 4 tables and then became quite still again. "So we've just got to try on the hat," Ron whispered to Harry. "I'll kill Fred," he was going on about wrestling a troll. Harry shrugged. "I wouldn't have minded wrestling a troll. Sounds fun, actually." Ron gave him a look that suggested he was reconsidering his choice of friends. Professor McGonagall now stepped forward holding a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted." The sorting began with Abbott, Hannah, Hufflepuff, and proceeded through the alphabet. Harry watched with interest as his new acquaintances were sorted. Hermione went to Gryffindor, surprising Ron. Neville also went to Gryffindor after a long deliberation, and Draco Malfoy was immediately placed in Slytherin. Finally, after Perks, Sally Ann, McGonagall called, "Potter, Harry." As Harry stepped forward, whispers broke out like little hissing fires all over the hall. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter?" The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. Next second he was looking at the black inside of the hat. He waited. Said a small voice in his ear. "Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? Oh my, what an unusual upbringing you've had." Harry smiled. "The Addams family adopted me." "The Addamses," the hat seemed to chuckle. "That explains quite a lot. I haven't sorted an Addams in generations. They tend to homeschool, don't they? Well, this does complicate things. You have qualities that would serve you well in any house, but your experiences have shaped you in unique ways." "I'm just interested in learning everything I can," Harry told the hat. "And making my families proud, both the Potters and the Addamses." "Noble goals," the hat mused. "You have the cunning and ambition of Slytherin, the intellect of Ravenclaw, the loyalty of Hufflepuff, and the courage of Gryffindor. But where to put you? The house that would help you the most, or the house that you would change the most?" "I think, better be Gryffindor." Harry heard the hat shout the last word to the whole hall. He took off the hat and walked toward the Gryffindor table, where he was receiving the loudest cheer yet. Percy the prefect got up and shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" As Harry sat down opposite the ghost in the rough he'd noticed earlier, he caught sight of the high table. Hagrid gave him a thumbs up. A professor with greasy black hair, a hooked nose, and sallow skin was staring at him with an unreadable expression. And at the center of the table, in a large gold chair, sat Albus Dumbledore, exactly as he looked on the chocolate frog card Harry had found on the train. The sorting continued, with Ron joining Harry in Gryffindor to his obvious relief. Finally, after Zabini, Blaise, was sorted into Slytherin, Professor McGonagall rolled up her scroll and took the sorting hat away. Albus Dumbledore got to his feet, beaming at the students, his arms opened wide. Welcome, he said. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you. He sat back down as everybody clapped and cheered. Harry laughed appreciatively. Dumbledore reminded him a bit of Uncle Fester with his apparent eccentricity. Is he, a bit mad? Harry asked Percy uncertainly. Mad, said Percy airily. He's a genius. Best wizard in the world. But yes, he is a bit mad. Potatoes, Harry. Harry's mouth fell open. The dishes in front of him were now piled with food: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, fries, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and mint humbugs. The Addams family had never stinted on food, but their tastes ran to more exotic fare. Eye of newt sandwiches were indeed Harry's favorite, along with Grandmama's special squirming pasta and Morticia's deadly nightshade salad, prepared with just enough antidote to make it safe, mostly. But Harry was hungry and the food smelled delicious. He piled his plate with a bit of everything except the mint humbugs and began to eat. It was all delicious. That does look good, said the ghost in the ruff sadly, watching Harry cut up his steak. You're Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, right? Harry said, recalling something he'd overheard. The ghost of Gryffindor Tower? Indeed. I'm pleased to be known to you, said the ghost, beaming. Nearly headless Nick. Ron blurted out. My brothers told me about you. I would prefer you to call me Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, the ghost began stiffly, but sandy-haired Seamus Finnegan interrupted. Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless? Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffed. Like this, he said irritably. He seized his left ear and pulled. His whole head swung off his neck and fell onto his shoulder as if it was on a hinge. Someone had obviously tried to behead him, but not done it properly. While several first-years looked horrified, Harry was fascinated. That's brilliant, he exclaimed. You know, my family has a portrait of Cousin Slash who was completely beheaded. He carries his head under his arm, but he always complains about the draft. You're lucky yours is still attached. Nearly headless Nick looked surprised, then pleased. How refreshing to meet someone who appreciates the finer points of posthumous predicaments. You must be the Potter boy I've heard so much about tonight. And your family is? The Addams family, Harry confirmed. They adopted me after my parents were killed. The Addams family? Nick's eyes widened. Well, that explains, quite a lot, actually. I believe I met one of your ancestors, Morticia's great-grandfather, perhaps, during the Headless Hunt of 1897. Fascinating man. Couldn't join the hunt, of course, being alive, but he took the most marvelous notes on spectral manifestations. Harry beamed. That sounds like great-great-grandpapa Addams. He wrote, Communing with the Dearly Departed, a practical guide that's still on our library shelves. The other Gryffindors were following this conversation with expressions ranging from curiosity to alarm. Hermione looked particularly conflicted, as though she couldn't decide whether to be horrified or to ask if she could borrow the book. As the feast continued, talk turned to families. I'm half and half, said Seamus. Me dad's a muggle. Mum didn't tell him she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him. The others laughed, but Harry frowned slightly. Why would your mother hide such an important part of herself, he asked. In my family, we believe secrets between loved ones only lead to trouble. Unless they're the fun kind of secrets that involve dungeons and surprises. Seamus blinked, unsure how to respond to that. What about you, Neville? Ron prompted, moving the conversation along. Neville explained how his family thought he might be a squib until his great-uncle Algy accidentally dropped him out of a window and he bounced safely to the ground. That's nothing, Harry said. Wednesday and Pugsley drop me from the roof at least once a month for fun. And then there's Uncle Fester's electrical endurance training. The other Gryffindors exchanged worried glances. Harry, Hermione said carefully, those things don't sound safe. Harry shrugged. The Addams family has a different definition of safe than most people. They believe children learn by doing, especially doing dangerous things in controlled environments. And you're okay with that? Neville asked, wide-eyed. Of course, Harry replied easily. They never let me do anything they haven't tested themselves first. And they always have healing potions ready. I've learned so much from them, how to fence, how to identify poisonous plants, how to escape from various restraints, how to detect cursed objects. Blimey, Ron said. No wonder you weren't bothered about the sorting. Sounds like you've been through worse. Harry grinned. It's all about perspective. The Addamses might seem strange to others, but they're the most loving family you could imagine. They just show it differently. At last, the desserts disappeared, and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. He gave several start-of-term notices: the forest was forbidden, no magic in the corridors, Quidditch trials, and a warning that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side was out of bounds to everyone who didn't want to die a very painful death. Harry's interest was immediately piqued by this last announcement. A painfully deadly corridor in a school full of children? How delightful. He made a mental note to investigate at the first opportunity. The school then sang the Hogwarts school song, with everyone finishing at different times. Finally, it was time for bed. Percy led the first years through the chattering crowds, out of the Great Hall, and up the marble staircase. As they climbed staircases that moved and past talking portraits that waved at them, Harry felt completely at home. The Addams mansion had plenty of similar enchantments, though admittedly fewer friendly ones and more designed to trap unwary visitors. They reached the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, hidden behind a portrait of a fat lady in a pink dress. Password? She asked. Caput Draconis, said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, round room full of squashy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory and the boys through another. At the top of a spiral staircase, they found their beds at last, 5 four-posters hung with deep red, velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. Too tired to talk much, they pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. Harry's last thought before drifting off was that despite the absence of chains rattling or Lurch's organ playing, he felt strangely at home in this ancient castle. He couldn't wait to write to the Addams family about everything he'd seen. Chapter 2, Hogwarts has never seen this before. Harry woke at dawn, already wide awake despite the early hour. Years of Wednesday sneaking into his room with various sharp implements had trained him to be a light sleeper. He lay still for a moment, listening to Ron's snores and Neville's soft mumbling, before quietly slipping out of bed. The Gryffindor dormitory was nice enough, but it lacked the comforting sounds of home: no chains rattling, no sudden explosions from Pugsley's room, no Lurch playing the organ at 3 in the morning. Harry sighed and decided to write his first letter home. Perched at the window with a quill and parchment, he watched the sunrise over the castle grounds as he wrote, "Dear family, Hogwarts is fantastic. The castle is ancient and full of ghosts. I've already met several, including nearly headless Nick, who knows great-great-grandpapa Addams. The staircases move, the portraits talk, and I've been sorted into Gryffindor, supposedly the house of the brave. I've made a few friends already. Ron Weasley has a large family and doesn't seem too terrified of me. Hermione Granger knows lots of facts but needs to learn about the practical applications of dark magic. Neville Longbottom is scared of everything but has potential, reminds me of Cousin What before puberty. Classes start today. I'll let you know how they go. The headmaster announced that a certain corridor is forbidden unless we want to die painfully. I'll investigate and report back. Please tell Wednesday I miss our knife-throwing sessions, and tell Lurch his cookies were perfect for making friends on the train. though I told them they were pumpkin, not blood-flavored. With affection and darkness, Harry he tied the letter to his snowy owl's leg. Take this to the Addams mansion, Hedwig. She nipped his finger affectionately and soared out the window. Harry watched her disappear into the distance before getting dressed for the day ahead. Finding classes proved challenging. Hogwarts had 142 staircases, doors that weren't really doors, walls pretending to be doors, and portraits that directed students the wrong way for fun. Harry actually enjoyed the castle's chaotic layout. It reminded him of the time Uncle Fester had rearranged all the rooms in the Addams mansion as a spatial awareness exercise. But his classmates found it less amusing. We're going to be late again, Ron moaned as they climbed their third wrong staircase. Snape will murder us. Cheer up, Harry said. Murder isn't the worst thing that could happen. Ron gave him a sideways look. You know, when most people say that, they don't actually have worse things in mind. Harry grinned. The Addams family believes death is just the beginning of a beautiful journey. Right, Ron muttered. Let's try not to begin that journey in potions class, okay? They finally found the dungeon classroom with seconds to spare. Professor Snape, a hook-nosed man with greasy black hair, called roll at the beginning of class, pausing at Harry's name. Ah, yes, he said softly, Harry Potter. Our new celebrity. Draco Malfoy and his friends sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling names and looked up at the class. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making, he began, speaking barely above a whisper. The class hung on every word. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stop her death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. Harry perked up at this introduction. Finally, someone who appreciated the beauty of potions like Grandmama did. Potter. Snape said suddenly. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Harry was already nodding. The draught of living death, sir, he answered promptly. Grandmama makes it every Halloween. She says it's perfect for pranks, though you have to be careful with the dosage or they'll never wake up. A flicker of surprise crossed Snape's face before his expression settled back into a sneer. And who, pray tell, is Grandmama? My adoptive grandmother, sir. She's been brewing potions since the 1700s. Her specialty is poisons, but she's excellent with healing potions too. The classroom went silent. Snape's eyebrow arched dangerously high. Indeed. Well, let's see if your unusual education extends beyond memorizing potion names. Potter, where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? Again, Hermione's hand shot up, but Harry was already answering. The stomach of a goat, sir. Though Uncle Fester keeps them in his coat pocket for emergencies. He says you never know when someone might slip something in your drink for fun. Snape's lips thinned. Correct. What is the difference, Potter, between monkshood and wolfsbane? Harry smiled. They're the same plant, sir. Also called aconite. Mother grows it in the garden. She uses it for arrow poison and werewolf management. This time, Snape couldn't hide his surprise. He stared at Harry for a long moment, as if seeing him for the first time. 5 points to Gryffindor, he said finally, his voice strained. It seems someone has bothered to open a book before coming to class. The rest of the lesson involved brewing a simple potion to cure boils. Harry partnered with Ron, guiding him through the process with surprising expertise. You've done this before? Ron whispered as Harry confidently crushed snake fangs into a fine powder. Hundreds of times, Harry confirmed. This is basically the same recipe Grandmama uses for her basic blemish banisher, though her version also removes small unwanted limbs. Ron nearly dropped his scales. Small unwanted what? Limbs. You know, extra fingers, vestigial tails, that sort of thing. She says magical bloodlines can produce interesting variations sometimes. Ron moved slightly farther away on his stool. Across the room, Neville somehow managed to melt Seamus's cauldron, sending their potion spilling across the floor and causing angry red boils to sprout on people's feet. Amid Snape's furious shouting, Harry calmly pulled a small vial from his pocket, uncorked it, and sprinkled green powder over the spill. The potion hissed and evaporated instantly. Snape, who had been berating Neville, stopped mid-sentence. "What did you just do, Potter?" "Neutralizing powder, sir," Harry explained. "Grandmama always says you should carry some for potion emergencies." Snape's expression was unreadable. "Stay after class, Potter." When the bell rang, Harry approached Snape's desk while the others filed out, Ron shooting him a sympathetic look. "Your knowledge of potions is unexpected," Snape said carefully once they were alone. "Thank you, sir. That wasn't necessarily a compliment." "Who exactly raised you, Potter?" "The Addams family, sir. They adopted me after my parents died." Something flickered in Snape's black eyes. "The Addams family. I've heard of them. Most wizards have," Harry said cheerfully. "Usually with a shudder." "And they taught you potions?" "Grandmama mostly. She's been brewing since before the Salem witch trials. She says modern wizards have lost the art of proper poisoning." The corner of Snape's mouth twitched. "I see. And this, neutralizing powder?" Harry reached into his pocket and placed a small vial on Snape's desk. "She makes it from crushed basilisk scales, bicorn horn, and purified grave dirt. Would you like some?" "I always carry extra." Snape stared at the vial, then at Harry. For a moment, the professor seemed to be fighting some internal battle. Finally, he picked up the vial and examined it. "Basilisk scales are extremely rare, Potter. How did your grandmama acquire them?" Harry grinned. "Family secret, sir. But she has an entire shed full of ingredients most potion masters would kill for. Literally, in some cases." Snape set the vial down. "Potter, I knew your mother. Lily was exceptionally talented at potions." Harry's eyes widened. "You knew my mother?" "We were acquainted." Snape's expression closed off again. "You may go." And 5 more points to Gryffindor for quick thinking with the spill. Harry practically floated to his next class. Points from Snape and information about his mother. The day couldn't get better. But it did get better. In Charms, tiny Professor Flitwick squeaked and fell off his stack of books when he read Harry's name during roll call. Once he recovered, he set them to practicing the levitation charm. "Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement we've been practicing," squeaked Professor Flitwick. "Swish and flick, remember, swish and flick. And saying the magic words properly is very important, too." Harry partnered with Neville, who was having difficulty making his feather move at all. "I'm just no good at this," Neville sighed after his 10th failed attempt. "Nonsense," Harry said. "It's all about confidence. Uncle Fester says magic can smell fear." "Smell fear? That's ridiculous," Hermione commented from the next table, where she was partnered with Ron. "Magic is about proper technique and focus." "And intent," Harry added. "Watch." He focused on his feather, thinking about how it would feel to make it float. In the Addams household, magic was as much about feeling as technique. He swished and flicked his wand and clearly said, "Wingardium Leviosa." His feather didn't just rise into the air, it shot up like a rocket, spinning in elaborate spirals before exploding into a shower of tiny flames that reformed into a miniature phoenix, which circled the room once before dissolving. The classroom went silent. "Good gracious," squeaked Flitwick. "That was most unusual, Mr. Potter. I've never seen such a reaction to a simple levitation charm." Harry looked slightly embarrassed. "Sorry, Professor. I might have put too much feeling into it. Uncle Fester says I have a tendency to overpower simple spells." Overpower is right. Flitwick looked more delighted than upset. 10 points to Gryffindor for such spectacular magic, though perhaps a bit more control next time. By the end of class, Hermione had also managed to levitate her feather correctly, though with considerably less pyrotechnics, while Ron had grown increasingly frustrated. "It's no wonder no one can stand her," Ron said to Harry as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor after class. "She's a nightmare, honestly." Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past. It was Hermione, and Harry caught a glimpse of tears on her face. "I think she heard you," Harry said. "So?" Ron looked uncomfortable but defiant. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." Harry frowned. "That wasn't kind, Ron. Wednesday says you should only be cruel to people who deserve it." "Your sister sounds charming," Ron muttered. "She is, in her own way." Harry looked serious. "But really, Ron. Hermione's just trying to fit in, same as all of us." Ron had the grace to look ashamed. "I'll apologize next time I see her." But Hermione didn't turn up for their next class, nor was she seen all afternoon. On their way down to the Great Hall for the Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Parvati Patil telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' bathroom and wanted to be left alone. Ron looked even more uncomfortable at this news, but Harry's attention was diverted by the Halloween decorations. 1,000 live bats fluttered from the walls and ceiling while 1,000 more swooped over the tables, making the candles and the pumpkins stutter. The feast appeared suddenly on golden plates, as it had at the start of term banquet. "Magnificent," Harry breathed, gazing at the bats. "Though not as impressive as the ones in our attic. Those have 6-foot wingspans and glowing red eyes." Ron, who had been about to take a bite of baked potato, slowly set his fork down. "You know, sometimes I can't tell when you're joking." Harry grinned. "Gomez says the best jokes have a hint of truth and a dash of horror." Their conversation was interrupted when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. Everyone fell silent as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped, "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor in a dead faint. The hall erupted in panic. It took several purple firecrackers exploding from the end of Dumbledore's wand to restore silence. "Prefects," he rumbled, "lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." As Percy Weasley efficiently gathered the Gryffindor first years, Harry suddenly grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione. She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip. "Oh, all right," he snapped. "But Percy'd better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors heading upstairs and hurried toward the girls' bathroom. They had just turned a corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. Ron pulled Harry behind a large stone griffin. To their surprise, it was Snape, not Percy, who crossed the corridor and disappeared from view. "What's he doing?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he in the dungeons with the other teachers?" "Search me." They crept along the next corridor after Snape's fading footsteps. "He's heading for the 3rd floor," Harry said, suddenly intrigued. "The forbidden corridor Dumbledore mentioned?" But Ron held up his hand. "Can you smell something?" A foul stench reached Harry's nostrils, a mixture of old socks and the kind of public toilet no one seems to clean. And then they heard it, a low grunting, and the shuffling of enormous feet. At the end of the passage, a massive creature emerged, 12 feet tall, its skin dull, granite gray, its great lumpy body like a boulder with a small bald head perched on top like a coconut. It had short legs thick as tree trunks with flat, horny feet. The smell coming from it was incredible. "The troll," Ron whispered, his face pale. "Let's go back," but Harry was staring at the troll with fascination rather than fear. Mountain troll, by the looks of it. Thick hide, resistant to most spells. Pugsley would love this. "Are you mental?" Ron hissed. "That thing could crush us." "Only if we let it," Harry said reasonably. He was calculating angles in his head, remembering Gomez's lessons on battling larger opponents. Look, it's going into that room. The troll slouched into a doorway and disappeared from view. The key's in the lock, Harry muttered. We could lock it in. Good idea. Ron agreed nervously. They edged toward the open door, mouths dry. With one great leap, Harry managed to grab the key, slam the door, and lock it. Yes, they exclaimed together, high-fiving. Their celebration was cut short by a high, petrified scream, coming from inside the chamber they'd just locked. Oh no, Ron gasped, as pale as the Bloody Baron. It's the girls' bathroom. Harry realized. Hermione, they said together. They unlocked the door and ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. Distract it. Harry shouted to Ron, grabbing a tap and throwing it hard against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione, turning its ugly head toward the noise. It saw Harry and lumbered toward him instead, lifting its club. Ron threw a metal pipe at it, which hit its shoulder. The troll didn't even seem to notice, but the noise made it pause again, turning toward Ron now. Harry seized the moment, doing something both very brave and very foolish. He took a running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel him hanging there, but even a mountain troll would notice if you stuck a long bit of wood up its nose, which is exactly what Harry did, jamming his wand straight into one of the troll's nostrils. The troll howled with pain and began flailing its club, with Ron shouting and Hermione pressed against the wall in terror. Harry clung on for dear life as the troll thrashed and twisted. Ron! Harry called, remembering one of Uncle Fester's favorite takedown methods. The club. Use the levitation charm. Ron pulled out his wand and cried, Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet, shaking and out of breath. Ron stood there with his wand still raised, staring at what he had done. Hermione spoke first, her voice small. Is it dead? Probably not, Harry said, examining the fallen creature with interest. He pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in what looked like lumpy gray glue. Just knocked out. Ugh, troll boogers. He wiped it on the troll's trousers. A sudden slam and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. A moment later, Professor McGonagall had come bursting into the room, closely followed by Snape, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll. Professor McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry with an expression of cold fury. What on earth were you thinking, said Professor McGonagall, with cold fury in her voice. You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory? Then a small voice came out of the shadows. Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger. Hermione managed to get to her feet. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, you know, because I've read all about them. Harry and Ron stared at her in disbelief. Hermione Granger, telling a downright lie to a teacher. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now. Harry stuck his wand up its nose and Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. Harry and Ron tried to look as though this story wasn't new to them. Well, in that case, said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them, Miss Granger, you foolish girl, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Hermione hung her head. Harry couldn't believe it. Hermione was the last person to break rules, and here she was, pretending she had, to get them out of trouble. Miss Granger, 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this, said Professor McGonagall. I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you'd better get off to Gryffindor Tower. Students are finishing the feast in their houses. Hermione left, and Professor McGonagall turned to Harry and Ron. Well, I still say you were lucky, but not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll. You each win Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go. As they hurried out of the chamber, Harry caught Snape giving him a strange, calculating look. The professor's robes were oddly disturbed, and Harry noticed a glimpse of what appeared to be a bloody wound on his leg before Snape quickly covered it. That was interesting, Harry commented as they climbed the stairs to the common room. Interesting? Ron spluttered. We could have been killed. But we weren't. And did you notice Snape's leg? It was bleeding. Harry's eyes gleamed with curiosity. I wonder what he was doing on the 3rd floor while everyone else was searching the dungeons. They reached the portrait of the fat lady. Pig snout, they said and entered. The common room was packed and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door, waiting for them. There was an awkward pause. Then, none of them looking at each other, they all said, thanks, and hurried off to get plates. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. The next morning at breakfast, a large raven swooped into the great hall among the delivery owls, causing several students to duck in alarm. It circled once before dropping a black envelope with a red wax seal in front of Harry. What the? Ron stared at the ominous-looking letter. That's not a howler, is it? No, Harry said, breaking the seal. Just a letter from home. The Addamses prefer ravens for important correspondence. They say owls are too cheerful. He unfolded the black parchment and read, Dearest Harry, we were thrilled to receive your letter. The house feels empty without your screams of delight during morning torture practice. Regarding your forbidden corridor, investigate with caution, darling. The most delicious dangers often have the sharpest teeth. Gomez suggests bringing rope and a battle axe, both enclosed, shrunk to pocket size. Tap 3 times with your wand to restore. Wednesday has been practicing her knife throwing using a Potter doll she crafted. Don't worry, she only hits non-vital organs as a sign of affection. Pugsley successfully created a new explosive and lost only 2 fingers, they've been reattached. Uncle Fester asked if you found any good dungeons for experiments, and Lurch composed a funeral dirge in your honor, we've included the sheet music. Remember, a true Addams faces danger with a smile and poison with a straw. With deepest darkness, Morticia P.S. Grandmama has enclosed some special cookies that cause temporary paralysis. Perfect for making new friends or escaping unwanted conversations. Harry smiled fondly at the letter, reaching into the envelope to find several miniaturized objects, a packet of suspiciously green cookies, and sheet music covered in what looked disturbingly like bloodstains. Hermione, reading over his shoulder, looked horrified. Your family sent you cookies that cause paralysis. And a battle axe? That can't possibly be allowed at Hogwarts. They're just being supportive, Harry shrugged. Besides, the paralysis only lasts about 20 minutes. Hardly worth mentioning. Ron cautiously poked the envelope. Are you sure that's safe to eat? The cookies, I mean. Oh yes, Harry assured him. Grandmama always tests everything on Uncle Fester first. If he survives, it's safe for human consumption, mostly. Mostly? Hermione squeaked. Well, there was that one Christmas when the eggnog made everyone's hair fall out, but Grandmama said that was an intended side effect. Harry tucked the envelope into his robes. Let's head to class. We've got defense against the dark arts first, right? As they left the Great Hall, Hermione continued to lecture Harry about school rules and dangerous artifacts, while Ron peppered him with questions about what other presents his family might send. Defense against the dark arts should have been fascinating, but Professor Quirrell's class was mostly a joke. His classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which everyone said was to ward off a vampire he'd met in Romania. His turban, he told them, had been given to him by an African prince as a thank you for getting rid of a troublesome zombie, but no one really believed this story. For one thing, when Seamus Finnegan asked eagerly to hear how Quirrell had fought off the zombie, Quirrell went pink and started talking about the weather. Harry found the class particularly disappointing. Growing up with the Addams family had given him a unique perspective on dark creatures. They weren't necessarily something to be feared, but respected and understood. Uncle Fester regularly wrestled with the werewolf that lived in their swamp, and Grandmama often invited vampires over for late-night bridge games. "Professor," Harry asked during one particularly dull lesson on defensive theory, "isn't it true that most so-called dark creatures are simply misunderstood? My family has found that treating them with respect often leads to mutual benefit." Quirrell stuttered something incomprehensible, his face paling. Harry noticed that whenever he asked questions or even made eye contact with the professor, Quirrell seemed unusually uncomfortable, even beyond his normal nervousness. More interesting was Harry's growing suspicion about Snape's involvement with whatever was hidden in the Forbidden Corridor. He shared his observations about Snape's injured leg with Ron and Hermione as they huddled in the courtyard during break one cold November day. "I'm telling you, he was heading for the third floor that night," Harry insisted. "And that wound wasn't from the troll. But why would Snape try to get past whatever's there?" Hermione asked. "He's a teacher, after all. Who knows?" Ron said. "But Harry's right, it does look suspicious." Harry was about to respond when he noticed Snape himself limping across the yard. Acting on instinct, Harry stepped forward. "Professor. How's your leg healing?" Snape stopped dead in his tracks, his black eyes narrowing dangerously. "I don't know what you're talking about, Potter." "Your injury, sir," Harry continued innocently. "I noticed it was bleeding after the troll incident. My family has an excellent recipe for wound-healing salve if you'd like some. Works wonders on animal bites." Something like alarm flashed across Snape's face before his expression settled into a cold mask. "Your concern is unnecessary and unwelcome. 5 points from Gryffindor for your impertinence." As Snape stalked away, Ron tugged Harry's sleeve. "Are you mental?" Antagonizing Snape. But Harry was thoughtful. "Did you see his reaction when I mentioned animal bites? I never said what caused his injury. He's hiding something, and it has to do with whatever's on the third floor." "Whatever it is, we should stay out of it," Hermione advised. "That corridor is forbidden for a reason." Harry just smiled. In the Addams household, forbidden was practically an invitation. The Quidditch season had begun, and Harry was excited to watch his first magical sporting event, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. He'd never been particularly interested in sports before. The Addams version of football involved an actual severed foot and often ended in the hospital, but the idea of a game played on flying broomsticks captured his imagination. The morning of the match was bright and cold. The great hall was full of the delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. "You should eat something," Hermione advised Ron, who was too nervous on behalf of the Gryffindor team to do more than push food around his plate. "I'm not hungry," Ron replied. Harry, meanwhile, was examining his morning delivery, another black envelope, this time containing a small, ornate box. "What's that?" Hermione asked cautiously, having learned to be wary of Harry's mail. "Not sure," Harry admitted, carefully opening the box. Inside was what appeared to be a pair of opera glasses, but with additional dials and attachments that looked decidedly non-standard. A note accompanied them, for watching the sport with proper perspective. The red dial shows bone structures, the blue reveals magical interference, and the green is for observing death omens. "Enjoy the game. Uncle Fester, death omens?" Hermione repeated weakly. "Uncle Fester believes all good sporting events should have an element of mortal peril," Harry explained, adjusting the strange binoculars. "These are great. Want to look?" Ron, despite his nervousness, couldn't resist. "Let me see." He peered through the modified opera glasses and promptly yelped, nearly dropping them. "I can see through people's robes." "And, is that skeleton moving?" "Probably," Harry said, taking them back. Uncle Fester's inventions tend to have unexpected features. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars, though none quite like Harry's. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean in the top row. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner on one of the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said, "Potter for President," and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Harry was touched by the gesture when they pointed it out to him, though he commented that the Addams family motto was actually, "We gladly feast on those who would subdue us," which earned him some nervous laughs. The teams marched onto the field, and the game began. Harry watched in fascination through Uncle Fester's enhanced binoculars, occasionally commenting on interesting anatomical features or magical signatures he observed. "Look at the Slytherin beater's femur structure," he remarked to Ron. "Fascinating bone density. Must have had several breaks in childhood." "Harry, please stop talking about people's bones," Hermione sighed. "It's disturbing." "Sorry," Harry said, not sounding sorry at all. "Oh. Death omen above the Hufflepuff stands. How exciting." The match was thrilling, with Gryffindor taking an early lead. But about halfway through, Harry's binoculars picked up something strange, a magical signature emanating from the teacher's stands. "That's odd," he muttered, adjusting the dials for a better look. "What is it?" Ron asked. "Someone's performing a complicated spell, aimed at the Gryffindor Seeker." Sure enough, the Gryffindor Seeker's broom had begun behaving strangely, jerking and twitching as if trying to buck him off. Harry focused his enhanced vision on the teacher's stand, where he could now clearly see two distinct magical signatures, one coming from Professor Quirrell and another from Professor Snape. Both appeared to be directing magic at the Seeker's broom, though in different patterns. "Snape and Quirrell are both doing something to the broom," Harry reported. "One's cursing it, the other might be countering. We have to stop them," Hermione said, already on her feet. "Leave it to me." Before Harry could explain the complexity of what he was seeing, Hermione had disappeared into the crowd. Minutes later, he spotted her creeping along the row behind the teachers. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered something. Bright blue flames shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what had happened. But in the chaos, she also bumped into Quirrell, knocking him over. The distraction broke both professors' concentration, and immediately the Seeker's broom stopped trying to throw him off. "She got them both," Harry observed through his binoculars. "Clever, though I'm not sure." His commentary was cut short as the Gryffindor Seeker suddenly went into a steep dive, clapping his hand to his mouth as though he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and the golden snitch fell into his hand. "He's got the snitch." "Gryffindor wins," people were shouting all around them. "That was lucky," Ron commented. Harry shook his head, studying the magical traces still visible through the binoculars. "I'm not sure it was luck. Something very strange is going on with Quirrell and Snape." Later, they gathered in Hagrid's hut for tea, debating what they'd witnessed. "It was Snape," Ron was insisting. "Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing the broom, muttering, never taking his eyes off the Seeker." "Rubbish," said Hagrid, who hadn't heard about the incident. "Why would Snape do something like that?" Harry exchanged looks with Ron and Hermione. Should they tell him? Harry decided on a half-truth. "We found out something about him," he told Hagrid. He tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he's trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? Fluffy? Ron echoed incredulously. Yeah, he's mine, bought him off a Greek chappie I met in a pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the— Yes, said Harry eagerly. Now, don't ask me any more, said Hagrid gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it, Hermione insisted. Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher, he'd do nothing of the sort. Actually, Harry interjected, I saw both Snape and Quirrell casting spells during the match. One might have been cursing while the other was counter-cursing, but I'm not sure which was which. This revelation startled everyone, including Harry himself. He'd been so focused on Snape that he hadn't properly considered Quirrell's involvement. That's preposterous, Hagrid blustered. Why would either of them do such a thing? What's Fluffy guarding, Hagrid? Harry asked, changing tactics. I'm just curious. I have a pet vulture at home named Bloodwing, but I've always wanted a proper Cerberus. Hagrid's beetle-black eyes crinkled with sudden interest. You have a pet vulture? Yes, Bloodwing. She's quite sweet once you get to know her. Only pecked out one mailman's eyes last year, which is a significant improvement. Ron and Hermione exchanged the look they often shared when Harry mentioned his home life, a mixture of horror and fascination. Hagrid, however, seemed delighted. Well now, ain't that something? Not many young folk appreciate misunderstood creatures. The Addams family believes all creatures deserve respect, Harry said solemnly. Even the ones with too many teeth or poisonous attributes, especially those, actually. Hagrid beamed at him. Right you are, Harry. That's why Fluffy's such a good guard dog. Loyal to the bone, he is. And what's he guarding? Harry prompted again. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Hagrid caught himself too late. Aha, said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. Nicholas Flamel, Harry muttered later that night, pacing the Gryffindor common room after most students had gone to bed. Why does that name sound familiar? You've heard of him? Hermione asked eagerly. Harry frowned. Maybe. Grandmama has mentioned a lot of ancient wizards over the years. They all blend together after a while. This one invented eternal torment, that one discovered how to turn people inside out. Ron shuddered. Your grandmother sounds terrifying. Oh, she is, Harry agreed cheerfully. But in the best possible way. She makes amazing cookies. The ones that paralyze people? Hermione asked dryly. Those too, but I meant her regular chocolate chip ones. Hermione shook her head and returned to the problem at hand. I've checked the library's recent wizarding history section, but I can't find Flamel anywhere. We're going about this all wrong, Harry said suddenly. If Flamel is important enough for Dumbledore to be working with him, but not in recent history books, he must be really old or working on something secret. Or both, Ron suggested. Exactly. Harry's eyes lit up. We need to research alchemists and immortality. Hermione stared at him. How did you make that connection? Harry shrugged. Just a hunch. Grandmama collects biographies of wizards who've cheated death. It's a bit of an Addams family obsession. Of course it is, Hermione sighed. Well, I suppose that gives us a starting point for research. We could ask your family, Ron suggested to Harry. If your grandmother collects that sort of thing. Harry considered this. I could, but they might get too excited and show up at Hogwarts to investigate themselves. Trust me, we don't want Gomez and Morticia breaking into the third-floor corridor. Fair point, Ron conceded. Library it is, then. As the Christmas holiday approached, Hogwarts transformed. Hagrid dragged 12 towering Christmas trees into the Great Hall, and Professor Flitwick decorated them with enchanted golden bubbles and tiny icicles. Magical frost patterns adorned the windows, and everlasting candles glowed from inside suits of armor. Harry signed up to stay at Hogwarts over Christmas when Professor McGonagall came around collecting names. Ron was staying too, as his parents were visiting his brother Charlie in Romania. Hermione, however, was going home to spend the holiday with her family. "Will your family be upset you're not coming home?" Ron asked Harry as they helped Hagrid bring in the last of the Christmas trees. "They understand," Harry said, though he looked a bit wistful. "Besides, they're planning a traditional Addams Yuletide ritual that Dumbledore probably wouldn't approve of. Involves a bit too much blood sacrifice and necromancy for school regulations." Ron nearly dropped his end of the tree. "You're joking, right?" Harry just smiled enigmatically. The day before the holiday break, a package arrived for Harry, a long, thin box wrapped in black paper with silver bats embossed on it. The note attached read, "Harry darling, since you won't be home for our traditional Yuletide ceremonies, we thought we'd send a piece of the family to you. This belonged to your adoptive great-grandfather Alphonse Addams, who used it to great effect during the Goblin rebellions of 1612. Use it wisely, and remember, aim for the heart or the head, everything else is just showmanship. With festive darkness, Morticia and Gomez. P.S. enclosed is a vial of Grandmama's special eggnog. 1 drop in a friend's drink brings holiday cheer and mild hallucinations. 2 drops induces temporary speaking in tongues. 3 drops, well, best save that for special occasions." "Should I be concerned about what's in that box?" Hermione asked warily. "Probably," Harry admitted, carefully unwrapping it. Inside was an elegant sword cane, similar to the one Gomez often carried but sized for a child. The handle was silver, shaped like a raven's head with ruby eyes. When Harry pulled on it, a thin, gleaming blade slid out. "Brilliant," he exclaimed. "That can't possibly be allowed at school." Hermione gasped. "It's a family heirloom," Harry explained, as if that settled the matter. "The Addams believe every young person should learn swordplay. It builds character." "And removes limbs," Ron muttered, eyeing the blade with a mixture of fear and admiration. Harry carefully resheathed the sword. "Don't worry, I won't use it, unless absolutely necessary." "That's what worries me," Hermione sighed. "Your definition of necessary seems to include whenever it might be fun." Harry just grinned and slipped the cane under his robes. It would come in handy for exploring the castle during the quiet holiday period. With most students gone for Christmas, Harry and Ron had the Gryffindor Tower largely to themselves. They spent their days sleeping late, roasting things on the common room fire, including some experimental marshmallows Harry had received from Uncle Fester that occasionally exploded, and plotting ways to get Malfoy expelled when term resumed. On Christmas morning, Harry woke to find a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed. "You too," said Harry. "Look, presents." "What did you expect, turnips?" Ron laughed, turning to his own, much larger pile. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper and scrawled across it was, "To Harry, from Hagrid." Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Harry blew it, it sounded like an owl. The second package, wrapped in black silk, was from the Addams family. It contained a variety of disturbing but thoughtful gifts, a hand-knitted sweater from Grandmama that occasionally writhed of its own accord, a collection of moderately safe explosive recipes for young wizards, from Uncle Fester, a preserved bat in a small glass dome from Wednesday, her favorite, the note explained, and a book titled A Gentleman's Guide to Dueling, both magical and mundane, from Gomez and Morticia. "Your family is..." Ron searched for a diplomatic word. "Unique?" Harry suggested. "That's one way to put it." Harry's next gift was from Hermione, a large box of chocolate frogs. "At least these won't paralyze anyone," he joked. Ron had also given him a gift, a box of every flavor beans. Thanks, Ron. No problem. My mum sent you something too. Harry was surprised to find a gift from Mrs. Weasley, a hand-knitted emerald green sweater and a large box of homemade fudge. She makes us one every year, Ron explained, holding up his own maroon sweater. Looks like you're an honorary Weasley now. Harry was touched. He immediately pulled on the green sweater, which was soft and warm, quite different from Grandmama's writhing creation, which he decided to save for special occasions. One package remained, a very light one wrapped in plain paper. Harry unwrapped it curiously. Something fluid and silvery gray slithered to the floor, gleaming in the firelight. Ron gasped. I've heard of those, he said in a hushed voice. If that's what I think it is, they're really rare, and really valuable. What is it? Harry picked up the shining, silvery cloth. It felt strange, like water woven into material. It's an invisibility cloak, said Ron, a look of awe on his face. Try it on. Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. It is. Look down. Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection showed only his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. There's a note, said Ron suddenly. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before were the following words: Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you. There was no signature. This belonged to my father. Harry whispered, stroking the silvery material reverently. That's amazing, Ron said. I wonder who sent it. Harry shook his head, still staring at the cloak. I don't know, but this is perfect. Now we can explore the forbidden corridor without being caught. Ron's excited expression faltered. Hold on, I thought we were just researching flannel in the library. You want to actually go to the corridor? Of course, Harry said as if it were obvious. How else will we find out what Fluffy's guarding? Besides, with this cloak and my sword cane, we'll be properly equipped. You're what? Ron's voice rose an octave. Harry pulled out the elegant cane he'd kept hidden under his bed. Family heirloom. Might come in handy against a three-headed dog. You're mental, Ron declared. Completely mental. Harry grinned. Gomez says all the best people are. Now, shall we explore tonight? The invisibility cloak opened up the castle to Harry in a way he'd never imagined. That very night, after the Christmas feast, he and Ron slipped under it and began exploring previously inaccessible areas. We should check the restricted section of the library first, Harry whispered as they crept through the corridors. That's where all the good books on alchemy would be. I thought you wanted to see the forbidden corridor. Ron whispered back. All in good time. Information first, then action, that's what Morticia always says. They made their way to the library, navigating by wand light. The restricted section was right at the back, separated from the rest by a rope. They carefully stepped over it and began examining the ancient, dusty tomes. These books look intense, Ron muttered, eyeing a volume that appeared to be bound in human skin. Reminds me of home, Harry said fondly, scanning the spines for anything related to flannel or alchemy. He pulled out a large black and silver volume and opened it. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming. Run! Harry gasped, stuffing the book back on the shelf. They bolted, passing Filch at the library entrance. Protected by the cloak, they squeezed past him and fled down the corridor. They ran until they came to a tall suit of armor. Having no idea where they were, they stopped to catch their breath. That was close, Ron panted. What now? Before Harry could answer, they heard Filch's voice nearby, speaking to someone, Professor Snape. The library, you say? We'll catch them, don't worry. Harry grabbed Ron's arm and pulled him through the nearest door, which thankfully was unlocked. They slipped inside, holding their breath as footsteps passed by outside. "That was too close," Ron whispered when the footsteps had faded. "Maybe, but look where we are," Harry murmured, gazing around the room they'd entered. It appeared to be an unused classroom. The desks and chairs were pushed against the walls, and propped against the wall facing them was something that didn't look as if it belonged there, a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on two clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top, "Erist stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi." What's that supposed to mean? Ron wondered. Harry studied it. It's backward. "I show not your face but your heart's desire." It's a mirror that shows what you most want. How'd you know that? Ron asked, impressed. The Addams family has several cursed mirrors. You learn to recognize the signs. Harry approached it cautiously, stepping in front of the glass. What he saw made him clap his hand to his mouth to stifle a gasp. He was not alone in the reflection. Standing beside him was the entire Addams family: Gomez, Morticia, Wednesday, Pugsley, Uncle Fester, Grandmama, and Lurch. But there were others too, a woman with dark red hair and bright green eyes, and a tall, thin man with untidy black hair and glasses. His birth parents, James and Lily Potter. In the reflection, both his families stood together, united, with their hands on his shoulders. They were all smiling at him, except for Wednesday, who never smiled, but looked slightly less murderous than usual. It was a perfect blending of his two worlds. "What do you see?" Ron asked, unable to see Harry's vision. "Both my families," Harry said softly. "The Addamses and the Potters, all together." "What about you?" "Take a look." Ron stepped in front of the mirror and his face lit up with wonder. "I see myself, but I'm older and I'm head boy. And I'm holding the Quidditch cup. And I'm Quidditch captain too. I look good." Harry studied his friend's transfixed expression with growing concern. He recognized the look. It was the same one Uncle Fester got when he found a particularly powerful explosive device. "Ron, we should go," he said, pulling his friend away from the glass. "This mirror could be dangerous. Objects that show you your deepest desires often have a price." "Just one more look," Ron protested. "No," Harry said firmly. "Trust me on this. In my family, we learn early that magical artifacts with this kind of power usually feed on something: your sanity, your life force, your soul. Let's get out of here." Reluctantly, Ron agreed, and they slipped back under the cloak. As they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry couldn't stop thinking about the image he'd seen, his two families united. It was a beautiful vision, but he knew better than to trust it. After all, as Gomez often said, the most alluring traps are the ones you willingly walk into. Harry couldn't sleep that night, haunted by the faces he'd seen in the mirror. Despite his own warnings to Ron, he found himself drawn back the following night, alone this time. He sat cross-legged in front of the mirror, staring at his birth parents. It was the first time he'd seen them clearly, beyond the few grainy photographs the Addamses had managed to find for him over the years. "I thought you might be back, Harry." The quiet voice startled him. Harry looked over his shoulder to see Albus Dumbledore sitting on one of the desks against the wall. "I didn't see you, sir," Harry stammered. "Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you," said Dumbledore, smiling. "So you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist." "I figured out what it does," Harry said. "It shows your deepest desire." "Indeed it does," said Dumbledore. "You, who have never known your birth parents, see them standing beside the family who raised you, a perfect union of your two worlds." Harry nodded, impressed by Dumbledore's insight. "It's dangerous, isn't it? Grandmama says magical artifacts that show you what you want most often take what you need most." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your grandmother sounds remarkably wise." Indeed, the mirror gives neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. I understand, sir, Harry said solemnly. I won't come looking for it again. A very mature decision, Dumbledore approved. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. Harry nodded, then hesitated. Professor? May I ask you something? Obviously, you've just done so, Dumbledore smiled. You may ask me one more thing, however. What do you see when you look in the mirror? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. Harry stared. One can never have enough socks, said Dumbledore. Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. As Harry walked back to his dormitory, he couldn't help but think Dumbledore hadn't been entirely truthful. But then, as Morticia always said, everyone deserves their secrets, especially those concerning their heart's deepest desires or their preferred method of disposing of bodies. Term started again a week later. Hermione returned with renewed determination to find information on Nicholas Flamel, but they still had no luck in the standard library books. There has to be a better way to research this, Harry said one evening as they sat in the common room. We're missing something obvious. If only we could get into the restricted section properly, Hermione lamented. Not just sneaking around at night. Harry tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. I might have another option. It's a bit unconventional, though. Ron and Hermione exchanged worried glances. They'd learned that unconventional from Harry usually meant disturbing by normal human standards. What kind of option? Hermione asked cautiously. Harry reached into his trunk and pulled out a small wooden box with strange symbols carved into it. Grandmama gave me this for my 10th birthday. It's a divining box. A what? Ron leaned closer, curious despite himself. It helps you find hidden knowledge, Harry explained, opening the box to reveal an assortment of odd items, small bones, dried herbs, a vial of what looked suspiciously like blood, and a black candle. Harry! Hermione hissed, looking around to make sure no one else in the common room was watching. Whatever that is, it looks like dark magic. It's not dark, Harry protested. Well, not very dark. More of a deep gray, really. Grandmama says it's just old magic, from before wizards got squeamish about using biological components. Biological components? Ron repeated weakly. You mean like, blood and bones? Exactly, Harry nodded approvingly. But don't worry, these are all ethically sourced. The bones are from naturally deceased animals, and the blood is freely given. Whose blood? Hermione demanded. Harry looked slightly embarrassed. Mine, actually. Grandmama had me contribute it when she made the box. Said it would create a stronger connection. Hermione looked torn between horror and fascination. And this will help us find information about Flamel? If we do it right, Harry confirmed. We just need a quiet, private place to perform the ritual. It's not complicated, but we need about an hour without interruptions. Ron shook his head. You know, I keep thinking I've gotten used to your family's brand of weirdness, and then you pull out something like a box of bones and blood for casual research purposes. Harry grinned. Wait until you see the family library. Every book is bound in something exotic, and a third of them try to bite you if you don't stroke their spines properly. Let's focus, Hermione said, though she couldn't hide her curiosity. Where can we do this ritual? There's an empty classroom on the 3rd floor that's never used, Harry suggested. We could go tonight, under the invisibility cloak. And so, that night found the 3 of them huddled in an unused classroom, with Harry setting up his divining box by wand light. Are you sure this is safe? Hermione whispered as Harry arranged the small bones in a specific pattern around the black candle. Relatively, Harry replied, which wasn't as reassuring as Hermione had hoped. The worst that could happen is we summon a minor spirit that might answer our questions, or try to possess one of us. What? Ron and Hermione exclaimed together. I'm kidding. Harry laughed, then added under his breath, mostly. He sprinkled the dried herbs in a circle, then lit the black candle with his wand. Now we need to join hands and focus on our question. Think about Nicholas Flamel and what we want to know about him. Reluctantly, Ron and Hermione joined hands with Harry, forming a circle around the divining box. Harry began to chant softly in what sounded like Latin mixed with something older and stranger. The candle flame suddenly grew, turning an eerie blue color. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees, and the bones began to rattle slightly of their own accord. Is this supposed to happen? Ron asked nervously. Shoo, Harry concentrated harder, his eyes closed. Nicholas Flamel, reveal your secrets. The bones abruptly rearranged themselves into what looked like letters, ALCHMIST, alchemist, Hermione breathed. We were right. The bones shifted again, PHLOSOPHRSSTONE, the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione gasped. Of course. Before they could ask anything else, the candle flame flared violently and went out, plunging them into darkness. When Harry relit his wand, the bones had returned to their original positions, and the room felt normal again. The Philosopher's Stone, Hermione repeated, excitement making her voice shake. I can't believe I didn't think of it before. I've read about it. The ancient study of alchemy is concerned with making the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance with astonishing powers. It will transform any metal into pure gold and produce the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal. Immortal? Ron echoed. It means you'll never die, Hermione explained. I know what it means. Ron snapped. So that's what Fluffy's guarding. The Philosopher's Stone. It makes perfect sense, Harry nodded, packing away his divining box. And if Flamel is the only known maker of the stone, that would explain why he's working with Dumbledore to protect it. Someone must be trying to steal it. Snape, Ron said immediately. Harry frowned. Maybe. But don't forget Quirrell was also casting spells at that Quidditch match. We need more information, Hermione decided. Now that we know what to look for, I can find the right books. As they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting closer to something dangerous, and exciting. Growing up with the Addams family had taught him to embrace such moments. After all, as Uncle Fester often said while playing with dynamite, if it's not risking life and limb, is it really worth doing? Sure enough, Hermione returned from the library the next day with a massive old book. I never thought to look in here, she whispered excitedly. I checked this out weeks ago for a bit of light reading. Light? Said Ron, eyeing the enormous volume. Hermione ignored him, flipping through the pages frantically until she found what she was looking for. Here it is. Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. The stone will transform any metal into pure gold. It also produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. Mr. Flamel, who celebrated his 665th birthday last year, enjoys a quiet life in Devon with his wife, Perenelle. 665. Ron gasped. And that's what Fluffy's guarding, Harry said thoughtfully. A stone that makes gold and stops you from ever dying. No wonder someone's after it. But who? Hermione wondered. Well, wouldn't anyone want it? Ron pointed out. Eternal life and unlimited gold sounds pretty good to me. Harry shook his head. Not everyone. The Addamses believe death is the greatest adventure. Living forever would mean missing out. Ron stared at him. Your family is weird, mate. Thank you, Harry beamed, taking it as a compliment. But the question remains, who's desperate enough for immortality to risk stealing from Dumbledore? A chill seemed to settle over the group as they contemplated this question. The answer, when it eventually came to Harry in the middle of the night, made his scar prickle uncomfortably. Voldemort. As their first year at Hogwarts continued, Harry found himself watching Quirrell more closely than Snape. Something about the stuttering professor set off warning bells, instincts honed by years of living with a family that collected cursed objects and entertained dangerous creatures. His turban, Harry whispered to Ron and Hermione during one defense against the dark arts class. Have you noticed it smells strange? Everything about Quirrell smells strange, Ron muttered. It's all that garlic. No, it's different, Harry insisted. It reminds me of the time Uncle Fester tried to preserve a troll head in the attic. Sort of, decaying, but with magic keeping it from fully rotting. Hermione made a face. That's disgusting, Harry. But potentially important, he countered. And haven't you noticed that my scar hurts whenever Quirrell has his back to me? This caught their attention. Your scar hurts. Hermione repeated. Why didn't you mention this before? Harry shrugged. Pain is relative. Wednesday and I used to play a game called Endure, where we'd see who could tolerate uncomfortable sensations the longest. A twinging scar barely registers. Ron shook his head in disbelief. I'm starting to think your sister is scarier than you know who. She would take that as a high compliment, Harry assured him. After class, they lingered in the corridor, discussing their suspicions in hushed voices. If Voldemort, oh, stop flinching, Ron, is after the stone, he'd need someone on the inside, Harry reasoned. Someone at Hogwarts. But Quirrell seems so pathetic, Hermione argued. Snape at least is intimidating enough to be a villain. That could be exactly why Voldemort would choose him, Harry pointed out. No one would suspect poor, stuttering Professor Quirrell. So what do we do? Ron asked. Harry considered this. We watch both of them, gather more evidence, and prepare for the worst. I'm going to write to Gomez and Morticia for advice. They have experience with dark wizards. That evening, Harry penned a carefully worded letter to his adoptive parents, hinting at his suspicions without revealing too much. He knew the Addamses would read between the lines. They were masters at deciphering cryptic communications, having corresponded with various supernatural entities for generations. The response came 3 days later, delivered by a large black raven that caused a sensation in the Great Hall when it swooped down during breakfast, scattering eggs and sausages with its enormous wingspan. The letter was written in what appeared to be red ink on black parchment, though Harry suspected it wasn't ink at all. Our dearest Harry, how intriguing that your first year is already bringing such thrilling dangers. Your instincts about your professor sound perfectly reasonable. The best predators are those who appear to be prey. Regarding your scar, magical wounds inflicted by powerful dark wizards often retain connections to their caster. Grandmama suggests a poultice of graveyard moss and banshee tears, enclosed in the small blue vial, which may help with the discomfort, though it might also cause temporary facial paralysis. As for your suspicions about what lies beneath the turban, there are several possibilities, all delightful in their macabre implications. 1. Possession, in which case the host body will show signs of deterioration and unusual magical signatures. 2. Parasitic attachment, look for symptoms of magical drainage and unusual eating habits. 3. Partial reanimation, the smell you describe is consistent with incomplete necromantic processes. We've included a small amulet that helps detect dark magical presence. It will grow cold when near powerful dark magic, and possibly shriek if the darkness is particularly potent. Wear it under your robes, as teachers might confiscate such useful tools. Remember what we've taught you about confronting dark forces: respect them, understand them, but never fear them. Fear clouds judgment, and an Addams must always keep their wits sharp, like their favorite stabbing implements. With love darker than the deepest night, Morticia and Gomez. P.S. Wednesday has been perfecting a new poison and wishes to know if you'd volunteer to test it during summer break. We've told her you'd be delighted. Harry folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his robes, along with the small amulet, which resembled a tiny shrunken head, and the blue vial. What did your family say? Hermione asked anxiously. They think I'm right to be suspicious, Harry summarized. And they've sent something to help us detect dark magic. He showed them the amulet, which Ron immediately recoiled from. Is that a shrunken head? Don't be ridiculous, Harry said. It's far too small to be human. Probably from a rabbit or something equally harmless. Hermione looked slightly ill. I'm not going to ask how your family acquired a miniature shrunken head. What does it do? Gets cold near dark magic, apparently. And might shriek. Great, Ron muttered. Nothing suspicious about a randomly shrieking accessory. Despite his skepticism, Ron agreed that having a dark magic detector could be useful. The trio decided to test it that very day by walking past Quirrell's office after classes. As they approached the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, Harry felt the amulet grow ice-cold against his chest. When they passed directly outside Quirrell's private office, it began to vibrate violently and emit a high-pitched keening that fortunately only they could hear, as Harry had it under his robes. That's definite, Harry whispered, hurrying his friends away before the sound attracted attention. Something very dark is in there. It could be a dark artifact he's studying for class, Hermione suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Or it could be exactly what I suspected, Harry countered. We need to keep a closer watch on him. Over the next few weeks, they took turns tracking Quirrell's movements around the castle. They noticed he spent an unusual amount of time on the third floor, near the forbidden corridor, and often appeared to be talking to himself when he thought no one was around. I'm more convinced than ever that he's after the stone, Harry told his friends one evening in late April. And I think he's getting closer to figuring out how to get past Fluffy. We should tell Dumbledore, Hermione insisted. Tell him what? That my shrunken head amulet shrieks around Quirrell. Harry shook his head. We need more concrete evidence. Or we need to make sure he can't get to the stone, Ron suggested. Harry's eyes lit up. Ron, that's brilliant. We don't need to prove anything if we can protect the stone ourselves. That's not what I meant. Ron protested, but it was too late. Harry was already formulating a plan. We'll need to find out what other protections are in place besides Fluffy, he mused. There must be more than just a three-headed dog. How are we supposed to do that? Hermione asked. Harry grinned. I think it's time for another chat with Hagrid. Their opportunity came a few days later when they visited Hagrid's hut for tea. The gamekeeper seemed preoccupied, keeping all the curtains closed and stoking a roaring fire despite the warm spring day. Hagrid, Harry began casually, we know the Philosopher's Stone is being guarded by Fluffy, but there must be other protections too, right? Enchantments from the teachers? Hagrid frowned. Course there are. Plenty. Enchantments. Magic from Professors Sprout, Flitwick, McGonagall, Quirrell, Snape, and Dumbledore himself. Why'd you ask? Just curious, Harry said innocently. We've been doing some reading on magical security for a project. Before Hagrid could question this dubious explanation, Harry noticed something in the heart of the fire, a large, black egg. Hagrid, is that a dragon egg? Hagrid's beard twitched with barely suppressed excitement. Might be. Won it last night in a game cards with a stranger down at the pub. But that's illegal. Hermione gasped. And dangerous. What will you do when it hatches? Been readin' up on it, Hagrid said proudly, pulling a large book from under his pillow. Got this out of the library, Dragon Breeding for Pleasure and Profit. Bit out of date, but it's all in here. Harry leaned forward with genuine interest. What species is it? Norwegian Ridgeback. Rare, them. Wonderful creatures, dragons, Harry nodded approvingly. Cousin, it was nearly eaten by one in Romania. Said it was the most exhilarating experience of his life. Ron couldn't tell if Harry was joking, but Hagrid beamed at finding a kindred spirit in his appreciation for dangerous creatures. As they left Hagrid's hut, Hermione was beside herself. A dragon. He lives in a wooden house. That's not the important part, Harry said. Did you hear what he told us? 6 professors contributed protections for the stone. If we can figure out what each one created, we might be able to get through them ourselves if necessary. Why would we need to do that? Ron asked, bewildered. Because if Quirrell is working for Voldemort and he figures out how to get past everything, someone needs to stop him, Harry explained patiently. And I have a feeling that someone might need to be us. That's ridiculous, Hermione protested. We're first years. We should tell Professor McGonagall or Dumbledore. We will, Harry assured her. But only when we have proof they'll believe. Until then, we need to be prepared. The hatching of Hagrid's dragon a week later created both a distraction and an unexpected opportunity. After witnessing the baby Norwegian Ridgeback emerge from its shell, which Harry found fascinating and Ron found terrifying, they managed to convince Hagrid that he couldn't keep an illegal dragon in his wooden hut. With Ron's brother Charlie working at a dragon reserve in Romania, they arranged for some of his colleagues to take Norbert, as Hagrid had named the dragon, away. The plan involved sneaking the dragon to the tallest tower at midnight using Harry's invisibility cloak. Unfortunately, they were caught by Professor McGonagall on their way back down the tower after the handoff. Worse, Malfoy had discovered their plan and tried to catch them in the act, which resulted in all of them, Harry, Hermione, Neville, who had tried to warn them about Malfoy, and Malfoy himself, receiving detention and losing 50 points each from their respective houses. The loss of 150 points in one night meant Gryffindor went from first place to last in the House Cup competition, and Harry found himself suddenly ostracized by his housemates. They'll forget about it eventually, he told a despondent Hermione as they studied in the library, away from the glares of their peers. At home, Wednesday once released a swarm of carnivorous beetles during the neighborhood barbecue. People were upset for months, but eventually, they got over it. Mostly because she threatened them with worse if they didn't. Somehow I don't think threatening the entire house is going to help our situation, Hermione sighed. Harry shrugged. Probably not. But our detention might give us a chance to gather more information. It's in the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid, who knows what we might discover there. Only you would see detention in a dangerous forest as an opportunity, Ron muttered, shaking his head. The night of their detention arrived, and Filch led them down to Hagrid's hut at 11 o'clock. The gamekeeper explained their task: something had been killing unicorns in the forest, and they needed to find an injured one and put it out of its misery if necessary. They split into 2 groups, Hagrid taking Hermione and Neville, while Harry and Ron were paired with Malfoy and Hagrid's boarhound, Fawn. Just wait till my father hears about this, Malfoy complained as they entered the dark forest. This is servant stuff, not punishment for students. I thought we'd be writing lines or something. Writing lines? Harry laughed. That's what passes for punishment in your household. In the Addams family, punishment means spending the night in the Iron Maiden or helping Grandmama test experimental potions. Malfoy stared at him. You're making that up. I wish I were, Harry said cheerfully. The Iron Maiden isn't so bad once you get used to the spikes, but some of Grandmama's potions have very creative side effects. I grew a second nose once that could smell lies. Made Christmas incredibly awkward. Ron snickered at Malfoy's horrified expression. The Slytherin boy seemed unsure whether Harry was joking or not, which was exactly how Harry liked it. They walked for nearly half an hour, deeper into the forest, following a trail of silvery unicorn blood. The forest grew thicker and darker, the path becoming almost impossible to follow. Look, Harry said suddenly, pointing. Something bright white was gleaming on the ground. They inched closer. It was a unicorn, lying on its side, clearly dead. Its long, slender legs were stuck out at odd angles, and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaves. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. But before they could approach, a slithering sound made them freeze. A bush at the edge of the clearing quivered. Then, out of the shadows, a hooded figure came crawling across the ground like some stalking beast. It reached the unicorn, lowered its head over the wound in the animal's side, and began to drink its blood. Malfoy screamed and bolted, Fong following him. The hooded figure raised its head and looked right at Harry, unicorn blood dribbling down its front. It got to its feet and came swiftly toward him. Harry stood his ground, despite the searing pain that suddenly shot through his scar. He pulled out his wand with one hand and his sword cane with the other, the silver blade gleaming in the moonlight. "Run, Harry!" Ron yelled, trying to pull him away. But Harry was rooted to the spot, a strange calm washing over him despite the danger. Growing up with the Addams family had taught him to face darkness directly. He raised the silver blade, ready to defend himself. Before the figure could reach him, however, something leapt over Harry and charged at the figure. It was a centaur, and it drove the cloaked form away before turning to face Harry. "Are you all right?" the centaur asked. He had white blonde hair and a palomino body. "Yes, thank you," Harry said, lowering his blade but not sheathing it. "What was that?" The centaur looked at Harry with piercing blue eyes, his gaze lingering on the scar on Harry's forehead. "You are the Potter boy," he said. "You had better get back to Hagrid. The forest is not safe at this time, especially for you. Can you ride? It will be quicker this way. My name is Firenze," he added, as he lowered himself onto his front legs. "What was that thing?" Harry asked again as he climbed onto the centaur's back, helping Ron up behind him. "A monstrous creature," said Firenze. "It is a terrible crime to slay a unicorn. Drinking the blood of a unicorn will keep you alive even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." Harry's eyes widened with realization. "Voldemort." Firenze nodded solemnly. "Do you know what is hidden in the school at this very moment, Harry Potter?" "The Philosopher's Stone," Harry breathed. "So Voldemort's trying to steal it to restore himself to full strength." "Through a trusted servant," Firenze confirmed. "Tell me, who at Hogwarts seems most changed this year? Most unlike themselves?" Before Harry could answer, Hagrid arrived with Hermione, Neville, and a shaking Malfoy in tow. Firenze departed with a warning for Harry to be careful, and they all returned to the castle. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. Everything was falling into place: Quirrell's strange behavior, the pain in his scar, the unicorn deaths. Voldemort was at Hogwarts, working through Quirrell, trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone. "We need to act," he told Ron and Hermione the next morning. "Dumbledore's gone to London for some ministry business. If Quirrell is going to make his move, it will be soon. What can we do?" Hermione asked anxiously. Harry's expression was unusually serious. "We need to get to the stone first." Chapter 3, When Darkness Fights Darkness. Harry begins sensing Voldemort's presence due to an Addams family sensitivity to the dead and in-between states. After his encounter with the unicorn blood-drinking figure in the Forbidden Forest, Harry writes to the Addams for advice on dealing with partially dead wizards. Their response includes both information and some questionable tools. As Harry, Ron, and Hermione investigate the Philosopher's Stone, Harry's casual approach to danger both helps and hinders their progress. They navigate Hogwarts security using both traditional magic and Addams techniques. Harry's unique approach to problems, like using a blood-curdling lullaby to put Fluffy to sleep or identifying the correct potion through smell rather than logic, confounds his friends but gets results. The final confrontation with Quirrell/Voldemort takes an unexpected turn when Harry's Addams upbringing gives him a unique perspective on Voldemort's fear of death. Harry uses both his mother's love protection and Addams' knowledge about spiritual entities to defeat Quirrell, though in a way that leaves Dumbledore both impressed and slightly concerned. The year ends with Harry feeling torn between his two worlds but ultimately proud of his unique identity. On the train home, he invites his friends to visit the Addams mansion over summer, to their mixed terror and excitement. The final scene shows the Addams family waiting at platform 9 3/4, terrifying other parents but welcoming Harry home with their special brand of love. Key themes and elements. Different perspectives. Harry's abnormal upbringing gives him unique advantages when facing challenges. Family love. The Addams' macabre affection is still genuine love that has shaped Harry positively. Finding belonging. Harry creates his place in both worlds by staying true to himself, challenging assumptions. What appears dark may not be evil, and what seems light may not be good. Strength and uniqueness. Harry's unusual skills and perspective allow him to solve problems others can't. Throughout the story, Harry's power and confidence are demonstrated through his actions, strategic choices, and the genuine connections he forms. His macabre knowledge and comfort with darkness serve as strengths rather than hindrances, allowing him to face Voldemort in ways no one anticipated. The story maintains a fast pace with natural scene transitions and organic chapter development. Each chapter features different types of challenges, from social adjustment to magical mysteries to the final confrontation, while maintaining the central theme of Harry's unique approach to the wizarding world thanks to his Addams upbringing. When Darkness Adopts, the Peculiar Education of Harry Potter, Story Outline Overview. This story explores what happens when Harry Potter is raised by the Addams family, a clan that celebrates the macabre and supernatural, instead of the Dursleys. Loved and nurtured in their unique way, Harry arrives at Hogwarts with abilities, perspectives, and habits that shock the wizarding world. Comfortable with darkness but possessing a strong moral compass, Harry navigates his first year at Hogwarts, leaving chaos, confusion, and reluctant admiration in his wake. Main characters. Harry Potter, raised by the Addams family since his parents' death, Harry is confident, skilled in unusual magic, and has a completely different sense of normal than his peers. His scar is something he proudly displays. He views death, darkness, and danger as natural parts of life to be respected and sometimes celebrated. The Addams family, Gomez and Morticia, Harry's adoptive parents who teach him fencing, explosive magic, potions, and poisonous plants. Wednesday and Pugsley, sibling figures who become Harry's partners in chaotic experiments. Uncle Fester, mentor in electricity magic and strange sciences. Grandmama, teacher of ancient folk magic and potions. Lurch, Thing, and cousin Itt, each contributing unique skills to Harry's education. Hogwarts characters, Hermione and Ron, initially terrified but gradually fascinated by Harry's unusual knowledge. Neville, finds unexpected confidence through Harry's straightforward acceptance. Draco, discovers his dark wizard posturing pales compared to Harry's everyday life. Snape, conflicted between seeing James Potter's son and a student with genuine appreciation for the darker aspects of magic. Dumbledore, concerned but impressed by how the Addams have prepared Harry. Quirrell/Voldemort, disturbed by Harry's comfort with death and darkness. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.